One this kid lived shut away inside his bedroom because his father and stepmother were. Total nightmare. His own school friends betrayed him and became cruel bullies. To avoid the pain, he locked himself in his room and spent his free time playing games. Becoming the greatest Minecraft player the world had ever seen, creating massive maps for the game, building worlds where nobody could hurt him. But get this, a sudden, blazing portal of fire ripped open right in the middle of his bedroom. Out from the flames stepped Baphomet, one of the most formidable archdemons of hell, presenting a very simple proposal. Hell was overcrowded and needed an expansion, so he wanted Sung-gi to be the architect of the 20th hell. In exchange, he offered the power to banish any traitor. Directly there, Sung-gi accepted immediately. He chose betrayal as the central theme. He built something inescapable, and when it was finally ready, he went after his tormentors, one by one. The boy who spent months never leaving his room now held a special key, and he knew exactly which doors to use it on. His backstabbing friends will pay first. After that, maybe he will start cleansing this corrupt world without repeating the exact same mistakes as Kira. It all started a few days prior. Yeom Sung-gi was 18 years old, living in a dark room that looked more like an abandoned storage unit. Windows shuttered, a gamer's den of total isolation. Outside, his father banged on the door, screaming at him to come out, but his father was the exact reason he stayed inside. The stepmother tried to calm the angry man down, telling him to be patient. She had moved in right after Sung-gi's mother abandoned them, and she was clearly far more concerned with her own future than with the boy locked in his room. The two soon headed out for dinner, giving their son some breathing room. Inside, Sung-gi heard every single word from behind his closed door. Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Kim Sung-hwan, warning him his suspension was over and that he could return to school to get thrashed again. 3 months ago at a Korean high school, a thug raises his fist and lands a devastating punch, sending a student flying backward. The rest of the gang laughs and taunts the battered boy, though one of them seemed to feel a flicker of guilt. The victim on the floor was Yeom Sung-gi, and the gang leader barks at him to stand up for another beating. Yeom Sung-gi crawls over and begs Sung-hwan, the only classmate looking uneasy, to show some mercy, reminding him they had been friends since childhood. Sung-hwan looks down at his old friend lying on the cold ground, remembering their innocent past, but he is harshly snapped back to reality when the bully asks if he is actually friends with a pathetic loser. Talk about a devastating blow to his pride, so he acted like a coward, they sneer, to save his reputation instead of helping a friend. Sung-hwan decides to kick him instead. He plays along, shouting they were never friends. Where did he get that stupid idea? Sung-hwan keeps hitting him non-stop. The others keep mocking him, even as he lies bruised and swollen. Sung-hwan sneers one last time, telling him to never dare call him a friend again. He wanted nothing to do with a pathetic loser. Cut back to the present, where he is still completely lost in his game. It makes perfect sense why he chose to lock himself away from the world. On his screen, a prompt appears asking if he wants to save the Hellcraft map. He clicks yes and decides to upload the brand new world. While the upload progress bar fills, he takes a moment to review some of the map's features. At least inside the screen, nobody could ever betray him. So the young creator uploaded his new map link directly to the game's community blog. Right away, messages flooded in thanking him for the incredible new creation. Alone, he tried convincing himself this was all he needed. But trying to convince himself that room was enough was a total lie. The truth was, he felt incredibly lonely and deeply isolated from everyone. Terrified that stepping outside meant another painful betrayal, eventually he fell asleep. He woke up later, knowing his father and stepmother were probably asleep. He slipped back to his computer to check his map reviews. Praise flooded the screen, with players loving his brutal design style. He felt genuinely happy, but suddenly a strange message notification popped up. A bizarre direct message arrived right in the bottom corner. The puzzling text read, "Hello human, I had fun with the game. It seriously rivals real hell. Can we speak in person about creating it?" Yeom Sung-gi scoffed, thinking a child was inviting him to an interview. Besides, how could they meet up without even arranging a location? A deep voice suddenly boomed from the shadows, saying locations mean nothing. A sharp snap of fingers echoed right after those words. A fiery portal ripped open right in the boy's bedroom. He stared in utter shock, thinking the room was catching fire. Then a massive figure started forming directly inside the flames. A booming voice shook the room as he introduced himself. He announced he was Baphomet, ruler of the brand new 20th hell about to be built. The young map creator just let out a heavy, tired sigh. Surely months of isolation and depression had driven him completely insane. Now he was even hallucinating monsters. Loud footsteps approached. Baphomet hoisted him up, proving he was no trick of the mind. He had specifically come to recruit the boy for his level design talent. He was in total shock. This was real. He yanked himself free. Trying to back away, Baphomet firmly warned him to quickly calm down. If he did not, he would devour his brain to steal his knowledge. Now sitting face to face like an actual job interview, they stared at each other. Honestly, who casually pops open a can of soda while questioning a literal demon? Baphomet confirmed he was indeed a very real, high-ranking upper demon. He casually took a sip from the can like it was totally normal. Yeom Sung-gi then asked if he had seen his custom Hellcraft map. Baphomet nodded, admitting he was deeply impressed by the layout. Despite being completely inescapable, the map offered a faint glimmer of hope. It looked like light at the end, but it was just a false hope. Brutal traps meant solely to torture players, yet it possessed real dignity. Yeom Sung-gi stared back, knowing he built it out of pure spite. The demon explained that hell was rapidly running out of physical space. They needed an urgent expansion, and Baphomet was put in charge of it. He was officially tasked with managing this brand new 20th hell. So he wanted Yeom Sung-gi to design this ultimate new nightmare. Maybe it would look like Hellcraft or worse. The boy thought it over. But he had absolutely no intention of dealing with this demon. He just wanted to keep living just like this, surrounded by endless garbage. But how could he be satisfied with such a miserable existence? Baphomet questioned him. He still had one more offer left. Since a new hell was being projected, they needed some test runs before the official opening. That little detail finally sparked the boy's interest. So the final deal was simple. If he built this hell, he would have total freedom to lock up any sinner he wanted inside. Those who betrayed him, wouldn't he love to drag them straight into his own custom hell? It seemed Yeom Sung-gi had finally made up his mind, fueled by weakness and burning hatred toward everyone who had ever wronged him. He chose to become the new creator and reached for the key offered to him. If building a literal hell meant he could get revenge on those absolute worms, he would do anything. Without a single hesitation, he snatched the key as if he had been waiting for this very moment. Baphomet clasped his hands together. From that exact second, their contract was locked in. Hearing those promises, Yeom Sung-gi completely surrendered to his weaknesses and deep resentments. Without thinking twice, he accepted the offer and finalized his deal with the devil. Baphomet then asked what kind of hell he wanted to build, because making a hell required two completely essential ingredients. The boy asked what they were. First, every hell had to be built around specific crime, like the classic hell of greed or the hell of lies. Since those classics already existed, he had to dream up a completely new sin. It needed to be a main theme that perfectly targeted the people he wanted to punish. And the second crucial rule was that his hell required an inescapable layout. The whole point of hell is to torture sinners forever. If any souls actually escape, the hell vanishes and its creator dies instantly. In other words, if there was even a single flaw in the hell created by Yeom Sung-gi, the boy would face death. Still, there was nothing to worry about. The demon replied, if a flaw did appear and he died, he would personally obliterate the young man's soul first. Yeom Sung-gi swallowed hard. Well, it was time to begin. Baphomet snapped his fingers and everything around them began to shift. The clouds turned blood red. Storm lightning filled the city sky. A massive bolt struck the young man's house, surging directly into his computer. Gradually, the game on his screen transformed its entire layout. As he used the game to build the new location, demon minions would construct it in real time. It seemed everything on Yeom Sung-gi's computer was now directly linked to hell itself. Time for this human to show exactly what he could do. A construction sign appeared, and Baphomet calmly watched everything unfold. Honestly, the demon really loved that soda he was drinking. One after another, his workers looked totally ready to start building. They were only waiting for Yeom Sung-gi's command. An arrow flashed and the foreman gave the signal to the little minions. They rushed over to begin placing down blocks one by one. Meanwhile, Baphomet quietly observed the human in his bedroom since sealing the deal in the human world. 7 days, 4 hours and 37 minutes had passed, that human barely even sleeping. Yeom Sung-gi was building a magnificent castle right before his eyes. Was this human truly special, or was it pure hatred that gave him such power? The demon wondered if he had truly made a brilliant choice here. Right then, Baphomet heard the young man announce that the project was finally finished. The demon clapped and congratulated him. The human had actually built his own custom hell much faster than expected. Now they just needed to pick a fitting name. Yeom Sung-gi replied with a single cold word: betrayal. It would be a hell for traitors. On the monitor, the familiar prompt popped up, asking the question he already expected. He clicked yes, saving the new map as the hell of the traitors. He stood up. For the first time in months, he stepped out of his dark room. Right there in the kitchen was his stepmother. Payback time, but Baphomet warned him that his new hell could only punish those who had actually committed the sin of betrayal. That absolute condition was non-negotiable for the system to activate. He understood completely. No match, no power, but if all conditions were met, the key would react, opening the gates of hell to drag the sinners right inside. The young man approached his stepmother, who was busy taking photos of her brand new purse. Well, look who finally crawled out of his hole. You should take a shower, she said, because you stink just like your mother. Yeom Sung-gi stared down at the key in his hand. It was a tricky situation. Because his hell was brand new, no real betrayal could have happened just yet. He would probably have to wait a few days, but his wicked stepmother kept complaining, demanding to know why he had to show his face around her. Meanwhile, she casually picked which purse photo to post online. The more she whined, the more he wanted to throw her straight into hell. She was definitely toxic scum who deserved to suffer. His mother was only 23 when she was sold into an arranged marriage. It was a miserable business deal. The poor woman suffered at the hands of her in-laws her entire life. Yet she always smiled warmly whenever Yeom Sung-gi was near her. Everything in her life had gone wrong. She should have been crying constantly. Yet she kept smiling. Yeom Sung-gi absolutely hated seeing her cover the pain and hearing his parents fight, only for her to pretend everything was fine. But eventually, she was cast aside completely. If his father had left for love, it might have hurt less, but instead, she was replaced by a younger woman who only cared about cash. And the absolute worst part, Yeom Sung-gi would constantly hear her talking trash about his father to her friends. The absolute viper never hid it and even threatened him directly. If he did not want to be thrown out like his mother, he had better keep his mouth shut. She was a parasite who wanted to live in luxury by destroying a whole family. Yeom Sung-gi stood there silently while her annoyance grew by the second. Finally, he gathered the courage to ask how much cash she wanted to leave his father. The woman stared at him, completely baffled by the sudden, blunt question. He told her she did not need to pretend anymore, since her greed was obvious. The stepmother gasped, feeling deeply insulted that this kid dared to speak to her like that. Who did this brat think he was? But then, he made a totally unexpected offer. The 100 million won his father had saved up for his college fund. Plus, he knew exactly where his dad kept the savings notebook. Billion won. Hearing that number, her eyes light up with pure, unchecked greed. If she doubts him, he is ready to prove it. Still highly skeptical, the stepmother gets up to follow him, watching closely as he cracks open the massive safe. Before this, she only dreamed of scoring some luxury bags, maybe a nice apartment registered in her own name. But if Yeom Sung-gi is telling the truth, she is set for life. Finally, he clicks. The heavy door opened, revealing gold bars, bank ledgers, and stacks of cold hard cash. To seal the deal, he hands her a thick bundle, telling her she can escape abroad. She could start over completely, yet a tiny seed of doubt still lingers. Why hand over everything now? Watching from the shadows, Baphomet finds the whole scene hilarious. Looks like even this greedy woman has a tiny shred of self-preservation left in her. How is he going to make her take the bait? Watch closely, it is showtime. On cue, Yeom Sung-gi bursts into tears, sobbing that he just wants his real mother back. If this stepmother disappears, maybe his family will heal. Even Baphomet is stunned by the kid's terrifying acting skills. This boy is playing her like a cheap violin. He puts on a perfect childish act, making this as easy as taking candy from a baby. Greedy to the bone, she grabs her bag and begins frantically stuffing it with bills. Just like that, she walks straight into his trap. The ultimate betrayal against his own father is finally set. She greedily demands the bank codes, but he just smiles. Those won't be necessary, he whispers, not in the fiery pit she is headed to. The stepmother turns around, completely baffled, just as the mysterious key begins to glow. Yeom Sung-gi inserts and turns the key. Crackling lightning floods the room and a door appears. With a heavy metallic click, the door swings open. Slithering, scaled tentacles burst forth. Wrap tightly around the screaming traitor, dragging her kicking and screaming into the abyss. The instant the door slams shut, her terrified shrieks vanish, just like that. Yeom Sung-gi just cast a living person straight to hell. She lands on hard concrete. Trapped in an inescapable cell, suddenly the massive walls grind inward. Crushing the space tighter and tighter, Baphomet watches her torment through his screen. He asks if Yeom Sung-gi wants to watch, but the boy claims he is feeling slightly sick. The demon wonders if he is feeling remorseful, but he gets a sudden, shocking surprise. When he sees the boy burst out laughing, giggling wildly, Yeom Sung-gi rushes to throw on his school uniform. After months of isolation, the clothes hang loosely on his frame. Baphomet can only stare in absolute shock. It hasn't even been 1 hour since he condemned his stepmother to hell, and he is already hunting his next victim. The boy simply replies that as long as the sword is in his hand, he fights. After all, an empty hell is not really hell at all. Hunting for pure self-satisfaction might be highly twisted, but Baphomet cannot help but agree. The agonizing screams of sinners are what give hell its true flavor, so why not populate it? Yeom Sung-gi zips up his black school backpack and gets ready to head out. It has been 3 whole months since he last stepped foot inside a classroom. Now he is leaving home to hunt down his next target. Slowly but surely, his custom-made hell is growing. Honestly, this is getting pretty exciting. Over in classroom 2, row 4, several students are staring out the window. Someone jokingly asks if a celebrity just arrived, but the gossip spreading is far crazier. Yeom Sung-gi is back. No one in class can believe their own eyes. He is really back, but did he not drop out? Why did he return to school? Everyone wondered, but the real threat was here. They all knew the school gang would target him again, and they were right. The bullies would never let his return slide, and the room grew heavy. Tension filled the air as classmates anxiously waited to see what would happen next. How would his return change things? Well, Yeom Sung-gi had a very different plan. A plan aimed straight at Kim Sang-hwan and his thugs, who suddenly kicked the door open. With their target locked in, the leader sneered that the idiot had actually returned. They surrounded him, mockingly saying he should have warned them about his grand arrival. They would have prepared a warm welcome, but Baphomet completely misunderstood the situation. The demon assumed Yeom Sung-gi was some kind of popular celebrity among these kids. Sadly, the reality was far worse, as one bully grabbed the boy's notebook. He threw it on the ground, complaining that his school record was ruined. Thanks to the kid's trouble, there was a stain on his record, and now someone had to pay. To avoid becoming entertainment for the whole class, he needed to follow them. One bully warned him to come quietly, and the group headed to the bathroom. 5 against 1, a completely cowardly setup, as the annoying thug kept whining. He kept crying about his record, trying to shift the blame for their violence. They blamed Yeom Sung-gi for everything, acting as if Sang-hwan was the real victim. He stood there like a stone, silent as he listened to their absolute garbage. And right on cue, the first heavy punch landed straight on his face. That stubborn silence was starting to get under the big bully's skin. From the sidelines, Baphomet watched the beating unfold like a movie at the cinema. He realized this was what humans called cornering a victim, and things looked bad. Judging by the situation, making any of these thugs commit betrayal would be tough. So what was Yeom Sung-gi's next move? He slowly wiped the blood away. His goal was crystal clear now, and he wanted to drag them straight to hell. Just as the demon noted, there was zero trust here, making manipulation impossible. He couldn't force a betrayal himself, but humans have always relied on clever tools. They used weapons to hunt beasts much larger than them, and he would too. He only needed his brain, and honestly, his ultimate weapon here is sheer genius. The bullies burst out laughing when they saw him reaching into his school pocket. They assumed he was pulling out a cheap knife to defend himself like a coward. Instead, he pulled out 5,000 cash, shocking everyone in the room. He was going to use the power of money, but not as a bribe. After all, they could easily beat him up and steal the cash afterward. He muttered that he would accept the beating, but called their actions unfair. Watching the scene escalate, Baphomet was absolutely thrilled by the kid's moves. Yeom Sung-gi threw the stack of cash on the floor, making a request. He only had one condition, but Sang Hwan gritted his teeth and lunged forward. The leader stopped him midair, wanting to hear what the kid had to say. After all, cash was involved, meaning they had taken his bait perfectly. The leader bent down to collect the bills, laughing at the easy target. He figured if the kid handed over 5 grand easily, he had more. The bully asked what the request was, and the boy stared at Sang Hwan. He calmly asked them to beat him up, leaving everyone in pure disbelief. The leader is in absolute shock. If that stack wasn't enough, Yeom Sung-gi has even more in his pockets. Yeom Sung-gi calmly suggests destroying Kim Sung-hwan, the guy who betrayed him. His trap is finally set, the hunt is on, and a cold laugh echoes through the room. The leader laughs, thinking this idiot might actually be interesting, and stuffs the cash deep into his pockets. He mockingly congratulates Kim Sung-hwan on his final performance of desperate denial, noting that in the end, the two really were true friends. He tells them to consider the next few minutes as pure payback. One of the thugs reaches out to grab the boy, but he quickly dodges. "What the hell are you talking about?" he screams, trying desperately to defend himself. "We were never friends. Why would you trust scum like Yeom Sung-gi?" The leader just shrugs. They are simply taking a little cash from a friend. Absolutely shameless, Kim Sung-hwan stands there, unable to believe his ears. He glares furiously at Yeom Sung-gi on the floor, grabbing him by the collar. He demands to know who gave him the right to drag him into this mess. How could he do this to a friend? What friend is he even talking about? Yeom Sung-gi just grins and corrects himself, since they are childhood friends. It is only fair they share this horrible experience together. Furious, the brown-haired boy lunges to punch the protagonist, but gets cut off. One of the thugs grabs his collar, throwing him aside like a ragdoll. They were paid to do a job, and now it is time to deliver. They calculate how many punches it takes to add up to 5,000, and Yeom Sung-gi agrees. At 500 per punch, that makes 10 solid hits, without waiting a second. They start throwing punches, counting each blow while Yeom Sung-gi quietly watches. So this is how it feels to watch someone else get brutally humiliated. The impact sounds much softer than when he was the one taking the beating. How annoying, he thinks. Why did those bullies find this so incredibly fun? He reaches for his key, having successfully turned the gang against each other. Baphomet notes this is a completely different approach from how he handled his stepmother. The human prepares to unlock the portal, suddenly calling out to the gang. It is like they have been stung. Every single eye snaps toward him. They demand to know what he is doing, but Yeom Sung-gi just grins. "It is time to see how brave you boys really are," he says, inserting the key as the dark portal begins to take shape. The iron door swings open. Monstrous tentacles burst out, snatching the thugs one by one and dragging them inside. The leader desperately tries to hold on, but Yeom Sung-gi shows zero mercy. After all, this guy was known as an absolute demon to the other students. Memories of what they did to him flash through Yeom Sung-gi's mind. Every punch, every insult, and every second of torment. Now this trash is going to feel right at home. He slowly pries off the leader's fingers. With a final scream, the bully is completely dragged into the abyss. The only one left is Kim Sung-hwan, trembling like a terrified leaf. Yeom Sung-gi turns to his former friend as Baphomet watches, highly intrigued. He steps forward while Kim Sung-hwan backs away, asking if he is curious about what just happened. It might sound unreal, but Yeom Sung-gi just opened the literal gates of hell with a key he got hours ago. Kim Sung-hwan slowly asks if his life is actually being spared. Right then, distant memories of their childhood together flash through his mind. Those were such warm, happy days. Back in reality, he wonders what his friend thinks of him. Now, even after all this madness, he still views him as a friend. That beating from earlier, it should be enough. Kim Sung-hwan admits the other might not believe it, but he was terrified of those thugs too. Hearing those words brings a quiet relief. Maybe they can slowly rebuild their old bond. After all, Yeom Sung-gi turns to leave, but accidentally drops a key onto the floor. Seeing it clatter, Kim Sung-hwan instantly remembers those cryptic warnings and exactly what that key is capable of. Without hesitation, he lunges forward and grabs it. He sneers, "You idiot, do not act all high and mighty after sending thugs to beat me up." But the second he opens his palm to look closer, he realizes it is just a normal key. Yeom Sung-gi had intentionally dropped his own room key. The real one was still in his hands. Sung-hwan completely lost his chance at Redemption, sending another sinner sliding down into the hell of betrayal. Baphomet starts clapping. That was an absolute masterpiece of a show, twisting until the very end, but the young man explains that drop was never meant as a trap. It was a test. He genuinely wanted to give his childhood friend a real choice. The backstabber is now at rock bottom, though to be fair, hell does not really have a rock bottom. Everyone suffers, but with that resolved, things are about to get pretty dry again. Time to shake things up and bring some fresh chaos to this world. Yeom Sung-gi washes his face, quietly trying to adapt to his bizarre new situation. The demon admits he cannot quite figure the kid out, which makes things highly entertaining. When he dragged his stepmother down, he looked like a completely heartless monster. Yet, seeing his classmate made him hesitate, acting as if he actually felt a little disgusted by his own cold choices. Well, demons are not exactly known for judging, but humans might find this kind of emotional weight suffocating. Yeom Sung-gi turns off the sink and tells Baphomet to relax. He has no intention of letting any of this get under his skin. That lingering discomfort is not due to guilt or sympathy. He just feels pathetic for not cutting these snakes out of his life years ago before they could completely ruin it. This human is full of surprises. Baphomet is deeply impressed. He definitely picked the perfect partner. Soon, the sun is dipping below the horizon and they are back home, though things are far from normal. Mostly because there is currently a high-ranking demon sticking his massive head right out of the living room window. He seems to be closely tracking someone, walking right into the apartment complex. Once he is absolutely sure of the man's identity, the demon cheerfully announces that Yeom Sung-gi's father has finally come home. The boy remains silent, thinking, honestly, what now? Baphomet is buzzing to see what kind of cruel game he will orchestrate next. There is clearly zero love or trust between them, especially since the kid has been locked away for 6 whole months. Plus, a financial trap is useless, since the money belonged to the old man anyway. Sung-gi dryly responds that he has no plans for a cheap setup like that. He knows perfectly well it would fail. Suddenly, they hear the front door handle jiggling as someone unlocks the apartment. The demon eagerly begs for a tiny spoiler. The door creaks open. Turns out, Yeom Sung-gi's father runs a modest insurance business. Company one with insanely high premium rates. In short, he made a living by denying payouts to honest folks who paid their premiums. Suddenly, his father walks in and demands to know who he is talking to. He snaps as if playing video games in your room all day was not bad. Now you are going crazy. Looks like you are a failure, just like your mother. But Yeom Sung-gi does not flinch. He just looks at the glowing key in his pocket. Before pulling it out for Baphomet to see, there was no need for a trap here. His father was already a monster. Another victim had just been betrayed by him today. Hearing his son talk back, the old man raises his hand to teach him a lesson. But before that slap can even land, Yeom Sung-gi acts quickly. He triggers the portal. He finally understands why his father abandoned his own mother and treated his own son like trash. Decades of cheating others had turned betrayal into a daily habit. With that, the young man turns the key, and the massive iron gates of hell swing open once more. His father stands there utterly frozen in confusion. Then, with a simple goodbye, another greedy sinner gets dragged straight into the nightmare he helped build. The old man begs for mercy, but his son coldly tells him there is no escape where he is going. The gates slam shut. The only sound left is a faint, echoing scream fading into nothing. Baphomet stares at the digital prison holding the man. But aside from the soft hum of the screen, the room falls completely silent. Yeom Sung-gi stands up and gently picks up a fallen picture frame. It is an old family photo. Watching this, the demon asks if his revenge is finally over. He wonders what the kid will do next, and honestly, the answer is a total shock. With his mission complete, he calmly announces that it is time to turn himself in to the police. Down at the station, he confesses to everything while Baphomet watches invisibly beside him. But just then, a dark portal tears open right inside the room. A demonic messenger steps through. It turns out Lucifer wants a word with him. It is likely about the brand new hell that was just added to the system. Baphomet steps through the rift to meet with the absolute ruler of the underworld. They arrive at a massive castle where a council of 11 elite demons is already waiting. As Baphomet walks into the grand hall, a cold, smooth voice echoes through the chamber. The voice notes that all 12 of them have finally arrived. That chilling voice belongs to Lucifer himself. He sits high on his throne, Staring down at the master of the 20th hell, Baphomet looks around. Highly confused, why on earth are all 12 demon lords gathered in one place? They normally detest each other. Lucifer calmly tells Baphomet to take a seat. He walks over but demands some answers first since he was kept waiting. But the Supreme King has zero patience today and barks an immediate order to sit. Instantly, a glowing magic circle binds Baphomet and forces him down. No one is here by choice. They only came because Lucifer commanded it. Even Gargamel, a top-tier demon lord, looks completely miserable sitting there. They are about to lay down some heavy new rules for the underworld. And none of the demon lords are happy about it. The king begins speaking. He granted them all the right to build their own custom hells. But check the fine print, at no point did he say they would actually own them. He never actually promised that their custom-made hells would become the official one. A demoness named Lizen chimed in, pointing out that these custom creations remained their burden. Still, they would never be official domains. Exactly, Lucifer agreed, and then dropped an even more interesting detail. Not a single demon had built their hell alone. They each hired a human helper. Baphomet assumed he was the only clever one. The strategy made perfect sense. Ultimately, the most terrifyingly grand zone was the Hell of Disbelief, designed by a human named Dante. Suddenly, a bizarre eye started twitching, as if it wanted to speak. That was Sadius, another high-ranking demon, demanding to know Lucifer's true master plan. The king answered simply, he would select the absolute best hell to survive. Such a creation would join the official underworld, while the rest faced total extermination. Dread filled the room. Their worst fears were realized as Lucifer demanded a battle. The creators of these hells would have to tear each other apart. Meanwhile, back at the police station, things are about to get really messy. Yeom Sung-gi sat calmly. He reported his parents missing purely to throw off the investigation. But his clever little plan immediately hit a major snag. Word had got out about a whole squad of missing school bullies. Frantic parents were begging the police for answers. 6 people vanished in one day. All of them disappeared from the exact same block, and he was the sole connection. So why did he move so fast? Why not be a little more careful? Why banish everyone to hell in a span of just 1 or 2 days? Simple, there was absolutely no way they could actually prove his guilt. A suspicious connection was not enough. There was no physical evidence at all. Nobody alive had witnessed him opening the gates of hell to swallow them up. No murder weapons, no bodies, absolutely nothing for the police to find. Coincidences happen, and the legal system requires concrete proof to lock someone away. A smug smile crept onto Yeom Sung-gi's face. He was getting out of here. Outside, the junior detective sighed, admitting they had absolutely nothing on the kid. No matter how hard they pressed, there was zero trace of any foul play. How could an amateur teen pull off the perfect crime without leaving a clue? Detective Chief Park Sang-sik sighed, knowing their only option was to let him walk. But the veteran chief wanted to have one final chat with the boy first. He quietly instructed his subordinate to cut the audio feed to the room. Stepping inside, Park Sang-sik offered a fake apology for the rough questioning. Then the seasoned detective decided to throw out a little bit of bait. He claimed they were just following protocol and that he believed the kid's innocence. Yeom Sung-gi kept quiet, suppressing a smirk. Technically, he had not killed them. The boy had only banished them to eternal torment. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. His own voice echoed in the room, though he had only thought those words. Across the table, the chief was dangling a bizarre key, identical to his own. Park Sang-sik smiled, asking if the teenager was shocked by what he saw. It turned out Yeom Sung-gi was not the only contractor chosen by hell. This was a twist the kid absolutely never saw coming. The chief admitted his own surprise at how easily the confession slipped out. He never expected such an easy confession. Slowly, he stepped closer to Yeom. Sung-gi is completely lost in his conflicting thoughts. That detective's intuition is insanely sharp. Sung-gi cannot tell if he actually knows something, or if he just took a lucky guess to throw him off. Either way, things are tense. They stare each other down. Yeom Sung-gi makes up his mind. If necessary, he will kill the guy. Framing him for betrayal would actually be a pretty easy task. Suddenly, the room violently shakes. A dark portal rips open. Baphomet appears, stepping right into the middle of the interrogation room. Across the room, another portal rips open as Gargamel enters. Yeom Sung-gi is frozen in shock. Gargamel chuckles, saying they meet again. It seems the human vessels they both chose have already managed to cross paths. The masked demon welcomes the reunion, but warns that Baphomet needs control. He needs to control his pet because this little nerd is completely unhinged. This guy looks completely ready to tear open the gates of hell right now. Stay calm, he tells his human the games have not even started. Yeom Sung-gi demands answers, having never expected other humans would have these powers. Baphomet admits he did not expect this either, but it is happening. Other demons are also using humans to build 12 different versions of hell. Only one can win. This lethal, absolute war begins now. Gargamel advises the detective to let the boy go for the time being. Keeping him free means he can take out their other rivals first. The cop agrees, already planning to let him go anyway. Legally speaking, proving these kids actually did anything is totally impossible. Besides, the detective is also using powers from hell, making him just as guilty. He is just as dirty as Yeom Sung-gi. Still, Baphomet finds them useful. Gargamel makes a very good point, because if they burn their powers too early, surviving to the very end of this deadly game will be impossible. Baphomet still has a lot to explain to his human. The detective opens the door. The two of them walk out together. Yeom Sung-gi is left absolutely fuming, completely outraged by this terrifying new reality. Meanwhile, the other demon tells Park Sang-sik that his hell is superior. For now, they will just use the others as bait. Park Sang-sik agrees. He will do whatever it takes to survive. He truly believes that only his survival can create a completely just society. Night has fully fallen by the time Yeom Sung-gi finally gets back home. He collapses onto his bed, absolutely terrified that the detective knows his secret. That cop is a hell creator too, Sung-gi yells in pure panic. Baphomet tells him to stop whining since he walked into the station himself. The idiot literally chose to turn himself in, so he has no right to complain. Yeom Sung-gi tries to shift the blame, angry that Baphomet kept secrets. But before he can continue whining, the demon aggressively grabs him by the face. Baphomet slams him hard against the wall, telling him to watch his mouth. He is dealing with an elite superior demon who can effortlessly rip his soul out. The terrified boy swallows hard as Baphomet finally releases his grip. But Baphomet is just as angry, completely unaware that Lucifer ordered this. The other demons to build their own hells, let alone commanding all. 12 of them to fight to see whose creation reigns supreme, Baphomet's furious. The Dark Lord's decree was blindingly obvious, leaving Yeom Sung-gi to question this incredibly. Lethal survival game, desperately trying to confirm if simply staying alive until the end was his only goal. The demon just mocked him. Did a mere human stand any chance? But first, the young man needed to learn the rules of this twisted game and what happened. While he was locked in that police interrogation room, Baphomet agreed to help. Promising a quick history lesson, he jabbed 2 fingers directly toward Yeom Sung-gi's eyes, causing him to curse in agony, brutal but effective. Pitch black, then a sudden flash of light broke through. A shape crystallized in the brightness, and suddenly Lucifer stood right there. Yeom Sung-gi witnessed the entire scene unfold with absolute, crystal-clear clarity, as if he were standing right next to them in that exact moment. Suddenly, someone raised their hand, praising Lucifer's desire for war as an absolutely brilliant idea. That was Lamb, the flaming eagle. To prepare for the battle, he added, they needed to know the rules. Lucifer smiled. His actual goal was far more twisted. He wanted the selected humans to drag each other down to the abyss. Neither the demons nor their human puppets would know their opponent's sins. They had to manipulate their human puppets, setting clever traps to send opponents straight to the abyss. Basically a blind game of tag, where all of your enemies remain completely hidden. The last survivor wins, Lamb summarized. Lucifer nodded in agreement with the idea. This would easily prove which of their hells was truly the most universal and terrifying. It would showcase how twisted a nightmare created by a human mind could be. Lamb raised his hand again, asking if any other rules existed. The Dark King declared that using their own demonic powers to assist the humans was strictly forbidden. Anything else goes, but the humans themselves must deliver the final, crushing blow. With that, the vision shattered, dragging Yeom Sung-gi back to the real world. He finally understood this was a literal game of death. Even if he kept his head down, another hunter would target him eventually. Baphomet nodded grimly. The exact same survival rule applied to the demons too. Bound by contract, if their human puppets perished, the demons would also be completely destroyed. Only one demon would survive. Talk about a massive revelation. But honestly, Yeom Sung-gi did not care about his partner's ultimate fate. If the demon burned in another lord's abyss, he would consider it deserved karma. Only one burning question actually mattered, prompting him to speak up. He asked Baphomet what would happen to all those prisoners if he ended up locked in another hell. It was simple, they would all be completely wiped out. There was no clean escape. Yeom Sung-gi had to win this at all costs. He refused to let those caged scumbags off with a quick, merciful death. Baphomet shivered. Demons are not used to this level of crazy. He was not fighting for survival, but to keep torturing his prey. Ensuring endless torment was the entire point of hell. He would never allow his masterpiece of pain to go to waste. Morality aside, Baphomet was thrilled to have a monster of his own. Suddenly, ruling the ultimate domain did not seem like such a distant dream. The demon reached out. He officially recognized the boy as his true partner. They saluted each other, but from afar, silent eyes watched their every move. Zadius and his human, Huminki, stood watching from a high rooftop. They observed from a distance. It seemed the deadly matches were finally starting. Yeom Sung-gi quickly wrote down the rules. Summed up, there were only 4. Rule number 1. Victory is decided when one creator successfully imprisons the other. Rule 2. Demons can assist but cannot use their own supernatural powers. 3. Any method is allowed, and Rule 4. The game continues until one remains. Unless Lucifer changed his mind, these were the strict conditions of the fight. But this raised an obvious question: to what extent could demons assist? Aside from their authoritarian power, what other abilities did they actually possess? Yeom Sung-gi asked. That basic authoritarian power was a direct gift from above. Lucifer had granted them basic skills, like the ability to cross through portals, emit devastating hellfire from their bodies, and command lower-tier demonic underlings. But besides this granted authority, every demon held a unique, personal capability. This was their innate power. Yeom Sung-gi grew curious and asked for details. He wanted to know Baphomet's trait. The demon revealed he could detect death. Since his early days, he could sense anyone close to their final breath. His job was simply guiding them down. Intrigued, the boy asked for specifics. He wanted to know how it worked. Suddenly, the loud doorbell rang. Yeom Sung-gi was not expecting visitors. He checked the intercom screen immediately. A girl stood outside, claiming she had something to show him. Before he could even process that, she began unbuttoning her shirt on camera. Completely caught off guard, Yeom Sung-gi demanded to know what she was doing. He threatened to call the police and cut the feed. Baphomet peeked out. He poked his head out as a dark, heavy miasma flooded the room. It was the chilling scent of death, the mysterious woman outside on the intercom. She was here to end Yeom Sung-gi's life. The boy stared in absolute disbelief. But he quickly collected himself. His sharp mind immediately kicked into high gear. He was a complete recluse who had done nothing to warrant an assassin. This left only one possible conclusion. She was definitely another hell creator. Outside, Huminki pulled a glowing key out. His reaction was all she needed. It was more than enough to fully activate her specific sin of lust. Now all she had to do was smash the door and claim her target. She would send him straight to hell. To be safe, she checked in with Zadius, who simply nodded. His observation skills were truly next level. He had tracked down another creator much faster than she had ever expected. Since the boy refused to step outside, she would simply break inside and finish it. Huminki raised a massive hammer and started violently bashing the front door. Yeom Sung-gi stared in absolute shock. This crazy girl was actually hammering away. He needed to find a counter-strategy fast, because her key was already activated. It did not take him long to realize her sin was lust. The relentless pounding on his door echoed loudly through the quiet apartment. He tightly gripped his own key, desperately trying to formulate a plan. When he first answered that intercom, he had no idea the danger was real. But she had no time to prepare. Could that quick move actually count as betrayal? Baphomet clarified that her action was far too shallow to be called a real sin. 4. The hell key to activate, the target must completely cast aside their faith. Obviously, a tiny trick like that did not count as betrayal, even if she meant it. The rules of hell were never that soft, yet Yeom Sung-gi remained completely calm. Seeing this, Baphomet asked if he had another hidden trump card to play. Another heavy slam rattled his door. If the intruder had already activated her key, and wanted to break in, the young man muttered, stepping closer to the closed wooden barrier. He absolutely had to make her believe he could unleash his terrifying power the second that door swung open, so the young man sat down right there and warned the frantic woman outside that stepping inside meant instant hell. She paused, briefly thrown off, but quickly decided he was just bluffing. She kept smashing the wood. Her frantic movements confirmed his private suspicion. She was desperately rushing because she had already met the conditions for her own. Triggered the precise conditions to open her hell's door. With a violent crash, Yeom Sung-gi offered one last warning, step inside and she would fall. Minki froze, completely caught off guard. She expected him to plead or run, but he was standing his ground. Could he actually be telling the absolute truth? She hesitated, suddenly feeling caught in his psychological trap. Just as he hoped she took the bait, he calmly asked if she wanted to know why he stayed, claiming his domain was the hell of invasion. She peered closely through the broken hole, and their eyes locked. It was a massive gamble, but he had to play his hand. There was absolutely nothing in Lucifer's rules that outlawed lying about your hell. Baphomet watched him in silence, deeply impressed by his quick thinking. Despite having mere seconds, he had successfully spun a deadly mental trap. But Minki was highly intelligent. She knew there was a solid chance. This was all a giant bluff. The odds of a lie were easily 90%. But what if she was wrong? What if his mind game was actually real? What if unlocking that door instantly triggered Yeom Sung-gi's hell? That terrible thought made her hesitate. She did not want to lose here. A heavy, tense silence stretched out as she weighed her moves. Option 1, force her key inside to activate her hell, risking setting off his counter trap. Option 2, back away and retreat. But if she did, she would lose her element of surprise forever. Yeom Sung-gi would analyze her move and figure out her trigger. That meant absolute defeat. Either way, she faced massive risk. What could she possibly do? It was like he was reading her mind, speaking aloud every doubt and desperate calculation swirling inside her head right now. Then he offered her an option that would supposedly benefit both sides. He suggested they form an alliance. She immediately mocked the idea. After all, only one of them could ultimately win this game. Teaming up simply meant they would have to betray each other eventually. But Yeom Sung-gi did not back down, continuing to reason with her. Did she seriously believe she could defeat the other 10 participants completely alone? That comment makes Minki hesitate. She knows she cannot just repeat this trick. Repeating her strategy on all other competitors simply will not work. Even worse, there is a very high chance he will team up with someone else instead and leak the dark secret behind her hell to the other players, leaving her totally helpless. Her critical element of surprise would be completely ruined. Feeling lost, she turns to Thaddeus for advice, but her demon assistant has no answers. He is just as clueless, leaving her with practically zero time to actually think. Yeom Sung-gi hands over his phone number. He offers her a partnership. All she has to do is call him to safely form an alliance without any issue. The rules of his hell will not trigger. Also, she broke his door. The cops are likely on their way, so she needs to escape quickly. Still deeply skeptical, Minki pulls out her phone to save. The contact info Yeom Sung-gi offered, not exactly a smooth win. Apparently, her opponents are actually just as smart as she is. The moment she finally leaves, Yeom Sung-gi drops the tough act and lets out a gasp. He almost died on day 1. Talk about an absolute close call. Baphomet admits he suspected someone had a tracker ability, but not so soon. To get targeted first is wild. Still, they survived the encounter. Yeom Sung-gi deserves some serious credit. His fast reflexes saved his life. The two start plotting their next move, keeping their guard up. While Yeom Sung-gi is busy adjusting his hell settings, a sudden notification flashes onto his screen. Minki actually accepted the alliance offer. For now, they are working together. He stares at the screen. Getting through tonight is a massive win. If she dares to spill his secrets, she is in for a shock. His betrayal hell will trigger instantly. This guy is a tactical genius. Meanwhile, Detective Park Sang-sik digs through highly confidential files. He is deeply focused, searching for other creators who share his dark powers. Gargamon watches closely, asking if he plans to use his power. That is not a terrible plan. However, the missing person count is massive. Tracking down every potential creator with his special ability is going to be incredibly difficult indeed. Right then, his assistant walks into the office, checking the time. He asks why the young man is still hanging around so late. The young man quickly replies that he is just finishing up some light restocking duties. While putting his bag away, he mentions an interesting local police call. Apparently, there was a break-in attempt at Yeom Sung-gi's apartment. He reports that some crazy student tried to smash her way into the boy's home. By the time patrol cars got there, she was already long gone. Just like that, Detective Park has a lead. This girl is definitely a player. Who knew that quiet kid would be targeted so early in the game? He orders his assistant to pull up the street camera footage immediately. He needs a clear face of the female intruder, but that is not all. He also wants a close watch kept on the kid all week. While these players are busy tracking and analyzing one another. Elsewhere in the city, things are taking a terrifying turn. The very first brutal elimination of the game is already taking place. He stared right ahead. Turns out this suited-up guy was Jam's player, the old man. Desperately begged the young man for mercy, crying to his own demon that he was innocent. But the well-dressed player slowly stepped closer, looking down at him. Sometimes, he said, your very existence is the real sin. The fact that this useless senior was still breathing his oxygen was completely intolerable. Just like that, even through the desperate pleading, the gates of hell opened wide. His soul got violently dragged straight inside. As his demon faded away, he muttered that Jam just got incredibly lucky this time, but before another word could be spoken, the human stomped on the pink demon's head, calling him utterly useless. Jam quickly warned him to stop, like it or not. That creature under his boot belonged to the high ranks of hell. Unfazed, the man turned back and warned him that if he hated seeing this, he had better start doing his job properly. The half-eagle demon stared back in absolute, wondering if he had actually heard those words correctly, but then the human laughed it off, saying he was only joking since they were partners after all. Only 10 contenders remained. Talk about high stakes. If they capture them, utopia is theirs. 3 days had already flown by since that crazy clash with Fabiana. Meanwhile, Yeom Sung-gi was just taking it easy, acting like he was on a relaxing holiday. Baphomet kept watching him, completely baffled by what his partner was actually plotting. 3 days ago, they did not just beat 2 rivals, they also secured a solid alliance, yet they had done absolutely nothing since then. To win this whole thing, should they not be hunting down targets already? Yeom Sung-gi admitted he got the impatience. Honestly, he hated sitting around too. So he was feeling pretty restless himself. The demon then pressed him further, demanding why he looked so incredibly calm. Well, first of all, a survival setup like this gets intense. Toward the end, you get 0 time to rest or gather info. Basically, once the real chaos starts, sleep will become a luxury for them. They will constantly be locked in a brutal cycle of hunter and prey. Second, if they are losing their minds waiting, other players are getting desperate too. Desperation leads to mistakes. Some fools always prefer winning a single fight over the war. So he wanted to strike only when a reckless player fell into his trap. Right on cue, his phone started ringing. Here we go. A call was coming through. It was Human Chi. She instantly complained that it had been 3 whole days since they made their deal, and he had not reached out once. He coolly replied that doing nothing was his strategy, waiting for an impatient intruder. She sighed completely over his attitude and told him something massive had just happened. While he was busy playing dead, a wild video was going viral online. He needed to check a viral stream post right away. She sent over the link so Yeom Sung-gi could see the madness for himself. A loud streamer named Gagaka popped up on screen during a wild live broadcast. He brazenly announced to his viewers that he was playing a deadly survival game. It was like a real-life battle royale where everyone kept their identities hidden. Since everyone was just hiding and waiting for a move, things were getting incredibly boring for a guy who craved absolute chaos. He expected a deathmatch to have far more screams and desperate chases. So he boldly decided to show his face first and invite the hunters in. Once triggered, the participants could choose to either go after him for his key or hunt down the other players targeting him, so he invited everyone to his house at midnight, promising the exact address in the comments. Baphomet and Yeom Sung-gi stared at the screen, completely stunned by this. This was the moment they had been waiting for, time to take action. A massive event like this was the perfect chance to spot other players, giving them an easy shot at thinning out the competition. Game on. Their little break was over. Downtown, Yeom Sung-gi sat waiting in a cafe. Expecting Hu Minki, she arrived right on cue, grumbling about his look, asking if he picked a crowded spot just to stop her from attacking him. He pointed out that since he left his house, he was at a disadvantage, unable to activate his sin of invasion without her coming to him first. Sitting down, she got right to business, asking about their plan for the streamer. Normal viewers aside, other creators had definitely seen that video too. At least a couple of real players were bound to show up there. What was their play? Yeom Sung-gi quickly weighed his options. He absolutely could not let her find out how his sin actually triggered. So he lied, claiming he would attend even if his power was barely useful. It would still be a perfect chance to unmask the competition. Honestly, not a bad plan. Now they just had to track the location. The very second that address went live, but then a total wrench in their gears. Out of nowhere, Detective Park Sung-sik strolled in. Flanked by his massive demon, Gargamon, Yeom Sung-gi froze in disbelief. Why was he here? Hu Minki spun around, staring right at danger. They were face to face with a rival. The detective just smiled warmly at them. He told them it was pretty cute, sitting in public like that, discussing murder plans. Panic shot through both teens as they exchanged a tense, worried glance. Sure, the cop seemed friendly enough for now, but they were still sweating bullets. How long had he been spying on them, and how did he have this much confidence? He did not even know their sins yet. Had they already triggered his key? Was he about to drag them straight to hell? Their minds raced. Park Sung-sik casually downed Yeom Sung-gi's leftover drink, telling them to back off. He dropped a heavy warning: whatever stupid stunt they were planning, drop it now. One wrong move and he would personally send them both to the underworld. Meanwhile, the streamer Gagaka was busy tracking his video views at home. After confirming his address was written correctly, all that remained was to hit post. His demon Jinjang quietly asked if he was truly going through with this. Smiling with manic energy, the kid confirmed they were absolutely doing this. He had already set up the spy cameras all over the place. Honestly, Jinjang's useless power was not good for anything else anyway. Just like that, the first big event of this deadly game was finally greenlit. Gagaka's trap was fully set. Back at the cafe, silence hung heavy. No one dared move. Suddenly, the detective's key began to glow bright. It meant someone nearby had just committed his specific sin, but when? Ever since that video announced the game, he had tried to tread lightly. To commit a single sin, Yeom Sung-gi remembered a tiny detail. At the police station, his key never activated. Could it actually have been? Reacting to Hu Minki instead of him, he stared closely at her as a sudden theory formed. Right then, instantly, Yeom Sung-gi tried to grab the attention of Hu Minki, but he was cut off. Park Sang-sik clearly had something to say. Still, Yeom Sung-gi stood straight up. The detective threw out one final warning. But the boy knew he was bluffing, if his theory held. The detective had threatened a stranger just to activate a sin. He used that moment to approach them. It was a complete bluff. With the sinner sitting right inside the cafe, all the pieces fit. No wonder his key started reacting here of all places. Besides, Yeom Sung-gi realized the detective had not checked his own key even once. He locked eyes with a highly anxious man sitting nearby. That table bell was brand new. Yeom Sung-gi walked over and went straight to the point. He asked the guy if Park Sang-sik had blackmailed him into coming here. Hu Minki gasped in pure anger as the setup was completely exposed. And just like that, our main protagonist completely proved his theory. The girl furiously demanded who he thought he was to treat them like trash. The terrified stranger took the hint, grabbed his things, and bolted out. Park Sang-sik just let out a cold, faint smirk, startling Yeom Sung-gi. He praised the boy for growing up, or maybe he had just slipped up before. What was this dangerous man plotting? The tension in here is getting crazy. But then he stood up and casually admitted it was all just a test. He simply had zero interest in teaming up with two total idiots. Still, Yeom Sung-gi remained deeply suspicious of him, refusing to lower his guard. Yet the detective warmly invited the two of them to sit back down and listen. He acted as if they had not just been fighting like enemies. He even drank from the cup of Hu Minki like it was perfectly normal. She quietly asked her partner if they were seriously going to listen to him. They had almost no time left, but Yeom Sung-gi stayed seated for a reason. The man was a detective, and that badge was extremely valuable. It meant he had the resources to hunt down other hell creators. He could easily restrict them using his public authority. Using his legal power to corner them was simple. In short, players like them, with only one card, were at a huge disadvantage. The detective held 2 cards. A partnership was a smart play. And with the coming battles, having extra brainpower was a major plus. Yeom Sung-gi made his move, demanding one critical condition before they agreed to anything. The detective had to step up and reveal what his personal sin was. But a card like that was too valuable to just hand over. Min-ki agreed, calling a blind alliance a terrible idea. But the cop quickly countered, offering them some incredible information instead of his secret. He had highly valuable intel to share, and they both knew it. Like it or not, they were completely hooked now. He leaned forward and asked how many people they had already sent to hell. That meant he had already sent 117 people straight to hell, as expected. Yeom Sung-gi and Min-ki were completely stunned by the news, though they tried to quiet down after disturbing the other customers, quickly apologizing for their wild reaction. Since he had condemned so many souls, he gathered a massive stash of crucial data. He knew exactly how key activation worked, completely inside out. The inspector mastered details like the exact limits of target distance and even how many people could be sent at. Once, with every new capture, he collected more and more precious intel. Now he was offering to share all this secret intel with the 2 of them, but only if they joined forces for the upcoming battle. Scheduled for that very night, naturally they accept. The deal is sealed. Once they are gone, Gargamon appears, questioning if Park Sang-sik had just given away far too much crucial data for a simple alliance, especially after working so hard to get it, but the inspector tells him not to worry because the notebook he handed them has a few key numbers switched, and if they ever try to betray him, Park Sang-sik will devour them both at once. Game over. Now things are getting tense. In a quiet city park, Yeom Sung-gi and Min-ki wait for the broadcast showing Gagaku's location, with just 3 hours and 20 minutes left before the official release. While they wait, it is the perfect moment to plan out their teamwork. He gets Min-ki's attention, asking a few very direct questions about how her specific key's ability actually functions. Power, can she activate it right now? If they track Gagaku first, they will grab a huge head start before any other players show up. In response, Min-ki grabs a twig and begins sketching on the dirt. She explains that her demon's special skill lets her locate the closest demon. In other words, she can only scan for players who are extremely nearby. That was why she approached him earlier, since he was currently the closest target in her active radius. He asks about the cooldown on her ability, and she reveals it triggers every 12 hours for just 5 minutes, knowing he would be home. She had likely used her power every 12 hours while moving through the city. Ever since their first meeting, she had kept her distance from other players because of how violent their initial clash was, so Yeom Sung-gi figures she tracked others but kept quiet. She was playing it smart. She originally planned to hoard that information, but since he saved her back at the cafe, it is only fair to return the favor now. Min-ki takes a slow, deep breath. Her tracking has revealed 2 separate locations. One target is currently at the airport immigration gate, and the other is deep inside the QS Corporation boardroom, meaning one of the competitors is likely an outsider, while the other is a massive corporate elite. Unfortunately, neither of them glanced into a mirror during her brief look, so she has absolutely no idea what either of them actually look like. She quickly clarifies that she did not hide this out of malice or any lack of trust. She honestly just forgot, simple as that. Wants to protect their alliance. He thanks her, offering some info of his own to build deeper trust between them. He explains that Baphomet's power allows him to detect the lingering scent of death itself, alerting him the second someone nearby gets close to dying. It reacted to the desire to kill, meaning it could predict the future. That was no bad ability at all, especially when paired with the sin of Min-ki's key. They knew each other better now. 3 hours left, time to rest. Separating was their best move. They had to be ready for the upcoming clash. She agrees. Yeom Sung-gi promises to send over the detective notebook. That way she can study it as well. He raises his hand, offering a high five and telling her to survive, no dying early. She would never let her prisoners get off with an easy death. It reminds her why her sin is lust. A recording phone sits on a desk. A young man appears on screen, while Min-ki questions him in the background. She wants to know why the camera is running, but he laughs it off. It is for the adrenaline. He begs her to do it just this once. But the next day at school, two guys start hunting her down. Insults are written inside her locker. Talk about a brutal betrayal. Her pathetic ex stands before Woo Min-ki, nervously wringing his hands. He begs for mercy, but she coldly tells him it is too late. The damage was done. Her entire family was destroyed because of him. Woo Min-ki snaps back to reality, fully agreeing with Yeom Sung-gi. She cannot let those sinners die easily. They seal it with a high five. Promising to survive, Yeom Sung-gi starts studying the detective notebook. He is taking notes when Baphomet suddenly manifests in his room. The demon complains instantly, begging his master to stop making him walk. His feet are hurting. He is only used to teleporting through portals. Yeom Sung-gi tells him to stop whining. Other creators can see demons. So Baphomet must remain completely hidden to avoid being caught so easily. Noticing his caution, the demon asks if he is trusting his partner too much. Yeom Sung-gi replies there is no issue since he lied about his true sin. He concealed his actual sin, and besides, he needs her power for this fight. This battle is going to be a numbers game. Other demons are definitely teaming up. Elsewhere in the city, Lam and two other demons are walking the streets. This sight backs up Yeom Sung-gi, the three demons walking together. Are Lam, Bamfir, and Gordon Kilius. However, their alliance is very different. It is nothing like the partnership of Yeom Sung-gi, Woo Min-ki, and Park Sang-sik. Yoo Nong-han is clearly the leader of this trio, treating in Yun-hae. And John Jong-chil like mere subordinates. He keeps refreshing his video feed. Waiting for Gagek's updates until the address is finally posted, Yoo Nong-han calls out to John Jong-chil, tossing him a key and ordering him to drive. He turns to the kneeling girl and tells her she will go in first. She's going to be their shield at Gagek's location, and Yun-hae asks why. But before she can finish her sentence, he flashes his glowing key at her. He tells her she is incompetent, and her pathetic life belongs to him now. Honestly, serving under a complete psychopath like him must be an absolute nightmare. John Jong-chil nervously asks if they will finally be free after this task. Yoo Nong-han laughs it off, promising to release them whenever they prove useful. He tells them not to worry, as long as they remain useful to him. With that, every single participant was now heading to the location Gagek posted. Let the games begin. Under the cover of night, the city looked peaceful. The crowded daytime streets were quiet now as Yeom Sung-gi and his crew gathered near a dark parking lot. They were busy discussing the secrets written down in the notebook from the detective. It turned out they could only drag up to 5 people into hell at once. Once a hell gate closes, there is a 1-minute cooldown before reopening. Plus, the target must be within 10 meters of the gate center. Even if they can see them, being out of range means no pull. Woo Min-ki pointed out a crucial detail he had nearly forgotten. Even if the key marks a target, the creator must acknowledge their sin. Otherwise, the gate stays shut. Essentially, there are 2 strict rules. The target has to sin, and the creator must recognize that crime. They definitely did their homework. Now get this, their first goal was simple. First, find the other players. Second, dig up clues about their sins. And third, stay alive, no matter how tempting it is to eliminate rivals. Survival was the priority. Woo Min-ki brought up taking out the competition. But Park Sang-sik made it pretty clear that there was no point. Dragging rivals to hell offered 0 reward, making the risk totally useless. Still, if an easy opening presented itself, they would definitely take it. He then handed the 2 walkie-talkies over to the younger pair. This allowed them to stay connected and warn each other of danger. Meanwhile, a sleek car pulled up right outside a luxury hotel. Yeom Sung-gi scanned the area, trying to spot enemies using binoculars. Did they seriously have to go in first without knowing the layout? An attack could come from anywhere, so waiting seemed much smarter. Let the others take the initial risk, but the boss was already annoyed. He was sick of all the whining since they were there to eliminate players. As his 2 lackeys knew, Yeom Sung-gi had already sent someone to hell. He claimed that sending another creator to hell granted a powerful extra ability. His 2 subordinates stared back at him in a state of absolute disbelief. If that was true, securing a bonus skill early is a massive advantage. Having more cards to play always guarantees a much better survival rate. Soon, the greedy lackeys realized that if they took someone down, they could break free from Yeom Sung-gi or match his power. It was a complete setup, and honestly, the clueless fools fell right for it. If such a prize existed, the organizer would have announced it. Thinking back to his last battle, he knew better. Right after the demon vanished, he had asked Lamb about any bonuses. Lamb had replied that he received no notification and felt absolutely zero changes. This meant there was absolutely no reason to kill other players directly. Instead, he needed a different approach, and it was pretty simple. He would gladly use his own two subordinates as bait for the incoming enemies. That way, he could easily gather intel about their opponent's hell. Once he discovered their opponent's sin, he could easily crush that new player. His master plan used the slave, cycle repeats to the absolute end, but then kill the final survivor. Gagaku coughs slightly, desperately trying to maintain his calm composure. He resumes the speech, claims everything he did was to empower his allies. Sure, now they just need to attach body cams and head out. No time to waste. Meanwhile, Gagaku monitors the security feeds. He watches the screens closely, tracking every tactical point. Wait, two dark shadows suddenly flicker against his window. It flies open, a woman enters, mocking him for not hearing her. She clearly used some heavy climbing gear to pull off this grand break-in. Her key pulses a bright glow. It is time to attack. Yun-hai raises the glowing artifact, summoning Vanity's Hell Gate. Dozens of dark bats swarm. Finally, this arrogant target faces his final judgment. A colossal bat unfolds. She twists the key alongside its massive wings. The portal rips open. Spectral hands lunge out, pinning Gagaku down. Suddenly, the hands recoil. Unbelievable. Both she and her demon freeze. What went wrong? It makes no sense. The key should work. Then a deep voice speaks from Gagaku. Yun-hai gasps. Pure horror strikes her. They targeted the wrong person entirely. His fake human face peels off. A monstrous demon stands revealed. Completely stunned, confused, before they can even react, the trap is sprung. Gagaku's hell activates. Thick green smoke blankets the entire room. Bound tightly by a magical rope, they are dragged straight down. Total darkness, then a rhythmic beat echoes inside a dance studio. 3 trainees practice. Carla stares blankly at her phone screen. She watches rivals dance. How much longer must she wait? Suddenly, a loud commotion erupts. An executive makes a shocking announcement. The young girl standing right beside him, named Yul, is debuting. Yun-hai stops cold. Her chest tightens with absolute disbelief. Why Yul? Why does she get to debut before anyone else? The boss shrugs, orders from the top. He simply cannot change it. Stop complaining, just support your teammate and join the celebrations. The rejection is devastating. She is completely crushed. Then a shadow approaches. It is Yul, offering a clean tissue with a sweet smile. Comfort far from it, Yul leans in close, whispering toxic words. She tells her to try harder next time, do better. 7 years as a trainee, maybe some people lack talent. Time to quit. Honestly, she is getting way too old for this. A true snake. Later in the pouring rain, Yun-hai drinks alone. She drowns her massive sorrows, staring bitterly at the television screen. Yul is on screen. Yun-hai knows how she got there. She slept with the company rep just to steal the spotlight. That night, a mysterious light floods her room. A strange woman appears. A demonic deal is offered. Desperate, Yun-hai cannot say no. But now, trying to drag him to hell, she fails completely. An elite corporate executive. Powerful, yes, but this makes absolutely no sense. He acts like some kind of saint, making all her desperate struggles look like a total joke. Then he claims that mercy is just for the weak, relying purely on cold, hard facts. While she is dragged away, she realizes she was foolish to even hope. Perhaps she was just naive for believing she could survive next to him. Now the deal is done, the dark hell gate slams shut, and her fate is sealed. Yun-hai is officially knocked out of the game. Just as things quiet down, her summon dissolves into nothing. Gagaga appears, totally thrilled with the victory. It was all a wild experiment to see if they could exploit Jin Zhang's unique power. Jin Zhang accepts the praise warmly, especially since his skill is usually for party tricks. Usually he just uses it to entertain other demons, but Gagaga is ecstatic. The creepy little guy is practically drooling, eager to test this power out again. Jin Zhang slides his mask back over his face as they prepare for their next target. Suddenly, a strange green glow flares up from a distant portal. Spotting the light through the window, Yeom Sung-gi grabs his radio to warn the others. That flare means a player portal just opened. Someone definitely just went down. A player has been eliminated, and Yeom Sung-gi starts planning his next move. Looking at the clue in the detective's notebook, he calculates the timing. The player who won this clash is locked out of opening another portal for now. They have to wait at least 1 full minute before they can activate it again. Is this his chance to strike? Can he sneak in and out in under 60 seconds? Before he can act, a hand suddenly clamps onto his shoulder. He jumps in surprise, instantly thinking another player has ambushed him. But it is just the detective, stepping in to kill his reckless idea. Making a move with zero preparation in only 1 minute is practically suicide. So what is the plan? Park Sae-byuk has a simple solution. He will just play dumb and ask if everyone is okay after hearing a scream. Yeom Sung-gi starts to object, but then the clever strategy clicks in his mind. The detective is using his official badge to force his way into Gwakka's apartment. Whoever just won that battle cannot risk dragging a real cop into hell. If a detective vanishes, a whole swarm of police will descend on them. They would end up as the prime suspects. Meanwhile, Yeom Sung-gi and the others have to play defense, blocking any other players from stepping into the area. The detective will handle whoever is waiting inside. He heads straight for the building. The guy is not just brave, he is incredibly sharp under pressure. They had been laying low for this exact moment, waiting for a fight to break out. This is their golden window to jump in and catch the exhausted winner off guard. Still, the tension is eating at Yeom Sung-gi as they move. Can he drag his enemy to hell before getting caught? Right on cue, the first security feed cuts out. The girl has vanished, but the opponent's hell style is clear. He tosses the tablet aside. It is time for them to make their move. The elevator dings as it reaches Gwakka's apartment on the 7th floor. As the detective steps out, he is caught on a live streamer's camera. The streamer wonders if this cop is an easy mark. He is definitely no resident. Park Sae-byuk walks right up to the door and presses the buzzer. The streamer gets excited, especially since the apartment door is already unlocked. Of course, this guy just had to interrupt. Gwakka retreated back to the closet. He needed to play his demon role properly, but Park Sae-byuk kept loudly knocking. He announced he was a detective, investigating an urgent report on the area. Gwakka knew those earlier sounds and flashes of light had caused this mess. It was a truly serious problem, but Gwakka reacted precisely as the detective had anticipated. If he sent the cop to hell, he would immediately get arrested. But opening the door would buy other players too much precious time. The faster he dealt with this annoying detective, the better. Gwakka slowly walked toward the door. He asked what kind of report brought the detective all this way. Park Sae-byuk claimed it was nothing serious, just a reported scream coming from next door. He asked to talk inside. Yeom Sung-gi watched from outside. He kept wondering how he could stop other players from entering. This task was way easier said than done, but he absolutely had to find a way. He needed to block them to keep their plan moving, so he radioed Woo Min-ki. He asked if she saw any movement. She said everything was quiet. She then asked if everything was going smoothly with the detective. Sung-gi explained the cop was already with the streamer. They had to guard the entrance. Woo Min-ki promised she would stay absolutely sharp, but then he asked her a weird question. She admitted she had not used her ability yet because she was with him all day. But he urged her to turn it on right now. He had a theory. He wanted her to activate it immediately because he had a strong hypothesis. What if her unique power targeted the closest moving player rather than just the absolute closest? If another player approached her location, her targeted vision would instantly swap directly to them. This was a brilliant gamble, and Woo Min-ki had never thought of it. She had only ever activated her skill when there was only one player around. She had never actually witnessed her target swap within a brief 5-minute window before. If this worked, they could easily separate real players from the ordinary citizens outside. They would instantly distinguish them from normal citizens. An enemy player could easily try to sneak inside while disguised as a simple resident. They could pretend to be a delivery person or resident. This would allow them to identify the opponent before being spotted. They could secure a surprise attack. She grabbed her walkie-talkie. She quickly climbed down from her ledge, calling out to Saedius right after. It was finally time for action. The moment she activated her skill, she saw Yeom Sung-gi. But exactly as he predicted, her vision began to warp. She quickly warned Yeom Sung-gi that 2 players were currently approaching their building. He immediately asked if both of them were players, or if it was just one. Because her targeted vision kept shifting, it was highly likely that both were. This immediately left Yeom Sung-gi with a massive, highly complicated problem on his hands. A single player was manageable, but dealing with two at once made everything incredibly complex. There was simply no way to trick both into committing the sin of betrayal. Even if he successfully handled one, the second player would likely catch him completely off guard. He had to keep his cool since they still had no idea who he was. He still held his best card, the absolute ultimate element of surprise up his sleeve. The two immediately began debating if he was a player, exactly as he expected. He wanted to keep ordinary people out of this mess. Meanwhile, Yeom Sung-gi hesitates, wondering if he should keep acting like a normal resident because, even if things went completely south for the detective, he still had Yeom Sung-gi. He looks back at every turning point in his life, realizing running away was always an easy way out, but he is completely sick of running from his problems. The young man squeezes his fist, trapped in his own head. He got the key to hell specifically to exact punishment, yet here he was planning to flee again. Yeom Sung-gi stands frozen as the two strangers get closer, finally making up his mind. He reaches out his hand, telling both men they absolutely cannot enter this building. They both look back, totally baffled. Okay, they actually stopped. What now? His immediate strategy is to keep them talking so they do not have a second to think. This is like two masterminds squaring off. Yoo Nung-han wonders if this kid is some ally of Gagaka he missed earlier, but quickly realizes that simply makes no sense at all. Since the streamer's zone was the hell of invasion, there was no reason to block their path here, so maybe he belongs to a completely different group of enemies. Still, that theory does not add up either. Treating him like a player does not really fit his bizarre behavior, but if he is not a player, why is he stopping them from entering? Suddenly, the kid claims they are checking the building because of noise complaint about some loud screaming on the 7th floor. Yoo Nung-han is shocked. He completely forgot about a neighbor potentially calling it in. The timing actually makes sense. Someone likely called after hearing on Yoonhai shriek before being dragged down to hell, so local cops had to secure the scene. But if that is true, it leaves two very different possibilities. Yoo Nung-han glares at Yeom Sung-gi with deep suspicion. The guy looks nothing like a real cop, being far too skinny, and the sweat pouring down his face is incredibly suspicious. But right before those doubts solidify into a real conclusion, Yeom Sung-gi takes an incredibly bold gamble. After all, a master liar has to fully believe their own lie. The businessman tries to question the detective's partner, but before he can get a word out, Yeom Sung-gi raises his radio to report. In from the lobby, while discussing Gagaka upstairs, Detective Park Sang-sik suddenly hears Yeom Sung-gi warning him over the channel that two civilians are attempting to head inside. If the kid reached out like this, things must be getting pretty dangerous. It is definitely time to wrap things up and leave. He radios back that he is on his way down. Apparently, the screaming report was just from a resident playing a horror game too loudly. The two intruders are completely thrown off, realizing everything this kid said is actually tracking. The clever kid really knows how to spin a perfect narrative on the fly. Checkmate is served. If his opponents cannot keep pace with this lie, they are completely trapped. He informs the men that the area will be cleared shortly, asking them to wait just a few more minutes. Right on cue, Park Sang-sik steps out of the elevator, confirming the report was a false alarm and apologizing for the delay. While sliding his badge back into his coat, the detective tells them they can head inside now. Yoo Nung-han thinks to himself that despite this annoying detour, he still knows the truth about Gagaka's hell, meaning his original plan is still active. He politely thanks the officer, commenting briefly on the strange neighborhood. Things had been pretty noisy lately. The two headed over to the elevator and entered the building. The moment they stepped out, Park Sang-sik asked if those two were also creators and how they had figured it out. Yeom Sung-gi said it was thanks to Hu Min-ki's ability, warning him that those two were definitely enemies. He asked about the streamer, and the old man admitted that, unfortunately, he had not been able to send Gagaga to hell yet. Still, thanks to the two young ones, they had managed to identify two more players. In total, 7 players had now been identified. One of them was the girl who had been absorbed by the YouTuber's hell. That was actually a really good result for just one night of work. From now on, they could say the game had truly begun. marking the first time so many players had come face to face. As planned, their group had managed to gather the information they wanted. Meanwhile, someone rang a doorbell. It was Yunong Han, and he had a proposal to make to the streamer. The businessman suggested that Gagaga become his dog, and in response, the boy asked if he was insane. From outside, he said the person the other had killed was one of his dogs, and that as long as he did not enter, the invasion hell could not be activated. His victorious smile was clear, while the young man inside had not expected that comment. If what that man said was true, then what would he do if the streamer never left his house? The businessman answered that it was quite simple. He would post someone to watch day and night, and the moment he stepped outside, he would personally show up and say he did not leave his house. How long could he last with the supplies he had, even if he managed without ordering delivery? He would last maybe 2 months, 4 at most. That brat had just signed his own prison sentence, but instead of submitting, Gagaga rebelled anyway and decided not to leave. The lunatic shivered with excitement. It would be a pleasure to torture him until he came out, and then he decided to leave. Gagaga discussed his new strategy with his demon, but unlike the boy, the demon was a bit more pessimistic, asking if it was really worth buying time like that without solving the situation. But Gagaga answered, saying that while time passed, someone else might end up sending that guy to hell. They just had to hold on a bit longer, but that method did not last even a week. Every food delivery he ordered came with trash instead, and after reporting it to the police more than 3 times, they started thinking it was a prank. Soon after, someone cut the power, and the water in the apartments became contaminated. The constant anxiety of the enemy suddenly breaking in at any moment turned into pure insomnia, and when the freedom outside his apartment became more tempting than ever, a business card appeared under his door. Get in touch if you have given up, it read, and with that, the streamer accepted his defeat. The day was sunny, and inside the office of the CEO of Q's Corporation, Yunong Han was waiting for Gagaga. He had lasted longer than expected, but now he would be his little dog. Inside a factory in Korea, a man screamed for help as he ran desperately. A terrifying demon and his player were chasing him down. The guy wearing a Friday the 13th Jason mask attacked, saying he had already given the man on the ground 2 choices. It was either go straight to hell or die by his hands. From inside his pocket, he pulls out his key. The man in white completely panics. Either way, he loses. The glowing kai means the condition was met. Since he refuses to make a choice, the hell creator will choose. It is time to go to hell, he says with a playful wink. Slowly, a grotesque portal forms as bloody vines wrap around the helpless man. Devoured whole, he just smiles and snuggles his approaching demon. What a twisted romance, the Black Knight speaks. He tolerates the weird hobbies, but demands they hunt other players. Otherwise, he will punish him. Yeom Sung-gi nods. He stops hunting humans. It has been 10 days since the hunt began. It has been 5 days since the Gagaka incident. Training starts now. Prepare for battle. He fixes his diet and sleep. Meanwhile, the detective starts investigating. They trace the 2 mysterious men from that night. One target is Yunong Han, a high-ranking director at QS Corporation. A total genius, landing that role at 31. But as for the other guy, details are incredibly scarce. One thing is certain, he is definitely not an ordinary person. A master strategist. He is a massive threat to the entire group. Detective Park Sung-sik looks at Yeom Sung-gi, agreeing completely. The man has high social status and a massive pile of money to use. Brain and money combined, dangerous. The second player is Jeong Chul, an ordinary architect. Nothing unusual here. He is likely forced into this alliance. During their last encounter, the architect stayed completely silent. He refused to speak voluntarily, acting incredibly nervous, hesitating unless prompted. Still, this information is useful. It might help them find a way to break their enemy alliance. Yeom Sung-gi thanks the detective and prepares to leave. Park Sung-sik notices something. The kid has matured. Yeom Sung-gi thanks him, admitting his mental state is much better now. Before, he had no idea how to live after completing his revenge. But now that worry is completely gone. Back home, Yeom Sung-gi feels a sense of relief. However, Baphomet questions this. Shouldn't they be eliminating opponents right now? Yeom Sung-gi explains that battles are often won before they even begin. Victory depends entirely on intelligence. You must know everything about your enemies while keeping your secrets safe. Never charge in blindly, especially when losing means spending an entire eternity rotting in hell. It is far better to prepare quietly. Baphomet then asks about Hu Minki. He explains that she is busy tracking their opponents twice a day. Suddenly, his phone begins to vibrate with an urgent call. He answers quickly, and she immediately reveals that she has found them. Yeom Sung-gi demands to know where she spotted him, and she says Myeongdong. She wants to loop in the detective, thinking they finally have a golden chance. But Yeom Sung-gi shuts down that plan instantly because the risk is simply far too high. Just gather info first, he insists, but she completely refuses. No homes are there. It is a commercial street with nowhere to hide. Plus, she is already inside his house. He has no clue. Since he does not know she is a player, it is the perfect surprise attack. He has no comeback to that, but the danger still worries him. They know nothing about this rival. Going in blind is a massive gamble. Before he can argue further, the line goes completely dead. She hangs up. Hu Minki is totally sick of just hiding. Why not just wipe out the competition early and get it over with? Right on cue, her target slips into a dim side alley. This is it. She is certain he is heading out to commit a sin. Tucking her key away safely inside her bag, she quietly creeps around the dark corner. She freezes. The man is just standing there, waiting for her. He turns, his face is heavily scarred, and his name is Jaehyun Inhwan. He knew she was tailing him, yet her key remains dead silent. Suddenly, he leaps forward like a wild beast, catching her completely off guard. Talk about a massive mistake. Now she's waking up inside an old, abandoned factory. Her head pounds fiercely. She struggles to remember what happened. He must have drugged her. That is the only way he caught her. She sighs. There is no one else to blame but her. Yeom Sung-gi was right. Now he and the detective are probably searching everywhere. She tries to calm down and think, what can she do now? Her key, phone, and wallet are all completely gone. Getting that key back without any tools is going to be incredibly difficult. To make matters worse, she is trapped behind solid concrete and iron doors. Escape seems impossible, but at least she still has Cedius with her. She admits she messed up, but they cannot give up now. Cedius starts to cry, but she desperately tries to stay positive. Even if she cannot trust them completely, the other two will save her. They have worked together before. Her tracking skills are far too valuable. She is the core of their entire game strategy. Cedius slowly calms down, beginning to believe her comforting words. She grabs a concrete block. She just has to survive until help arrives. Detective Park Sang-sik was right to worry. As soon as Yeom Sung-gi loses contact with the girl, he immediately calls the detective to warn him. She might have been dragged straight into another player's personal hell. Or there is a chance she has been brutally kidnapped by rivals. Park Sang-sik sighs. Reckless teenagers are always a handful. If her disappearance exposes his true identity, everything is ruined. Since her ability is indispensable, the two get ready to search for her. Baphomet is absolutely thrilled. They are finally making a move. The demon is sure a massive victory is finally on the horizon. It was a race against time. Could Hu Minkai survive long enough for rescue? Meanwhile, with her neck trapped in his grip, John In-hun mocked that she had held out pretty well for a girl. It would have been way easier if she had just given up from the start. Apparently, the drug he used did not work well on her. She called him a total psychopath. Complete lunatic, but to his twisted mind, those screams were the ultimate compliments. Nearby, Cedius and Black Knight clashed brutally, but this fight to the death was strictly between humans, and the Black Knight player came out on top with that. Decided he tossed Cedius away like trash. By Lucifer's strict rules, demons could not use powers beyond their basic innate gifts. The girl's demon desperately tried to argue to buy some time, but John In-hun was already moving. He hoisted her by her shirt onto a rusty hook, binding her hands and feet tight. Even hanging there, Hu Minkai refused to break. He leaned in to hear her whisper. She grabbed her chance while he was close, screaming right into his ear and biting down hard to stun him. John In-hun jerked back in sudden pain, but she clamped down harder. Then the unimaginable happened. He took a blade and sliced off his own ear. Talk about absolute madness. If Hu Minkai wanted it that badly, she could keep it. He already knew her friends were on the way, because he caught her tracking him with a phone earlier. Now fresh crimson blood dripped steadily onto the floor. This was exactly why he had kept her alive. Not out of mercy, but because Hu Min-kai was nothing more, nothing less than his perfect screaming bait. Hearing that, her remaining hope began to rot into cold, paralyzing dread. She was terrified of dragging her team into a trap. He began to hum, cheerfully muttering that the stage was set, only the main course remained. Miles away, Yeom Sung-gi was rushing toward the coordinates Hu Min-kai had shared earlier. He knew that, with the massive crowds and precious time slipping away, finding her would be almost impossible, but the guy had a secret trick up his sleeve. He ordered his demon Baphomet to use his unique senses to sniff out incoming death. The beast agreed to help, exhaling a thick cloud of dark smoke right at him. Slowly, Yeom Sung-gi's eyes adjusted to the spectral sight. The only path where his life was in extreme danger was the one leading straight to Hu Min-kai. If his theory held, the thicker the smoke got, the closer he was to her. He was actually turning a curse of death into a tracking device. Baphomet watched him with genuine respect. Humans really were full of surprises. And in just a few minutes, he had bent a fatal power to his will. Using it to track someone down, it was honestly impressive. Yeom Sung-gi pushed forward relentlessly, and as the sun began to slip away, he finally located the isolated warehouse where she was being held hostage. Immediately, he grabbed his phone to ping their coordinates to the detective. Now, the main obstacle was finding a way inside. Meanwhile, a heavy cart was rolled toward Hu Min-kai. She blinked open her eyes, spotting hammers, saws, and files. If this psycho was trying to act out some horror movie, she had only one defense: she must not give him the satisfaction of showing fear. So for now, she stayed limp, pretending to still be dead to the world. He nudged her to wake up, but she did not budge. John In-hun really did not want to play with his food unless she was awake, and he was getting pretty bored. His partners are taking too long, so he decides to have some fun in the meantime. He grabs her tightly by the hair, laughing that he already knows she is wide awake. Ending her life is not his goal. He just wants to play and torture her first. She closes her eyes, bracing for the worst, when suddenly a loud noise echoes from outside. Police sirens are drawing closer. The Black Knight asks if he left any clues behind. The human insists there is absolutely nothing to worry about, no traces. He chose him because he does his job flawlessly, meaning there is absolutely zero reason to doubt his lethal efficiency. Perhaps another player tracked them down and called the cops, or someone is an undercover officer. Either way, those are the only two real possibilities they are dealing with now. There is no need to panic. They simply need to activate the Black Knight's ability. John In-han barks out the activation command. Police cars rush to the scene. Sirens wail. The squad pulls up and readies themselves to storm the building. The mysterious informant stayed back in the shadows, obviously terrified out of their mind for their own personal safety. That young guy was always cautious and shy, so tracking the hideout was plenty. With the target pinpointed, it is finally time for the real professionals to step up. The place is an abandoned factory, yet someone built a bizarre structure inside it. It resembles a twisted haunted house. They must sweep every dark, dusty corner. Reports say a kidnapped woman is trapped inside. They must find her fast. Saving her is the main goal, but trust me, things are about to get ugly. Why is Baphomet's power surging? An officer steps deeper into the pitch blackness. Walking between windowless walls is terrifying. Then, darkness. A dark silhouette vanishes and sharp claws appear. The poor officer is blindsided, meeting a horrific end just like in a classic horror movie. The Black Knight has made his move, with John In-han sealed inside that heavy armor. He is absolutely thrilled to draw first blood, but his demon partner warns him. Focus, the beast tells him. This armor drains your life the longer you wear it. Wear it too long and their game is over, but that only excites him further. He wants to hunt the others down immediately. Meanwhile, the detective searches the corridors. Something is wrong with this structure, which resembles a twisted maze. Despite his desperation to rescue the girl, he knows this is an obvious trap. He gets on his radio, shouting for everyone else to fall back immediately. This labyrinth is far more complex than expected. They desperately need backup. But only dead silence answers his call, and Park Sang-sik feels a chill. He can feel it creeping in. Some horrific presence is slowly closing the distance. The heavy stench of death draws near. A veteran cop, he readies his weapon. He steels himself. Suddenly, the pitch-black armor lunges right at him. He reacts fast, barely dodging the lethal attack. The killer loves the challenge. Sang-sik fires his gun, but the bullets do not even scratch the armor. What kind of monster is this? A human? A demon? His mind reels. The metal beast attacks again, and he ducks. He demands answers from his demon. Gargamon replies that they are facing none other than the demon Black Knight. Sang-sik keeps attacking, highly confused by how this is even possible. Aren't competing demons forbidden from killing humans? Gargamon points out the trick. Take a closer look at the armor, the demon says. See that human face? They are ruthlessly exploiting the system, bending the rules to their will. He bent the rules just to land an attack. His weapon clattered heavily onto the floor. Monster or human, he had to fight to survive. Meanwhile, his opponent was enjoying himself more than ever. Yeom Sung-gi grew deeply worried about the delay and the loud crashes echoing from inside. Suddenly, the detective came, crashing through the factory side door, totally overwhelmed by the power of both demon and human. The young man stood paralyzed, completely shocked by what he saw. The armored monster stepped closer to the helpless detective, his instincts screaming that someone else was hiding nearby. He demanded they show themselves, warning that he would unleash his portal and swallow the detective whole. Hearing this threat, Yeom Sung-gi realized they might still have a slim shot. Park Sang-sik smiled weakly, his mind drifting back to his father's uniform. He remembered their small, clean family home and how happy they were. A television broadcast of a criminal arrest held his absolute focus back then. Suddenly, his mother playfully smacked his head with a metal spoon, asking if he ever got tired of watching those grim news reports. But the boy insisted that seeing justice served inspired him to do good. Every evening, his dad returned home, bearing small treats for the siblings. He always shared the most fascinating cases from his life on duty. But one day, his father did not return. Only his somber colleagues arrived. He had been captured during a dangerous raid on a local gang. The legendary hero, who once survived a knife attack, was gone forever. He died from a relentless, brutal beating at the hands of many. The crowd was so massive that the true killer was never identified. The media buried the tragic incident to preserve the reputation of the force. Watching the broadcast in absolute disbelief, he realized how broken their world was. Furious, he threw the remote control onto the floor and made a vow. He would become a detective to avenge his father's stolen legacy. Yet he quickly learned that evil often wins through legal loopholes and corruption. Greedy backdoor deals constantly poison the system from the inside out. Often, the people meant to protect the city were dirtier than criminals. Park Sang-sik fought not just for revenge, but to end these injustices. The streets needed cleaning, and he vowed to protect the weak and defenseless. Giving 100% of his life to the job, everything changed when a supernatural anomaly offered him the chance to exact true street-level justice. Back in reality, the detective rolled across the dirt from a heavy blow. John In-hwan laughed, completely drunk on his own terrifying raw power. The detective could barely support his own weight, yet he refused to yield. Too many corrupt souls remained unpunished for him to fail right here. He reached to unlock his hell, but his opponent grabbed his hand, mocking that he could never open the gate without turning the key first. Park Sang-sik struggled anyway, only to get brutally knocked unconscious once more. As the key fell, John In-hwan kicked it far out of reach. Gargamon could not interfere directly, but still called out the massive unfairness. His enemies simply laughed, asking what he actually expected from a real deathmatch. For him, society had not evolved enough. Nothing felt better than being a true predator, one who dominates and devours his weaker prey. Basically, no matter how clever a rabbit is, it can never stop the leopard he prepared to deliver. A final blow, but suddenly someone else caught his attention. John In-hwan stared at Yeom Sung-gi, wondering what on earth that other little rabbit was doing there. The detective stared back, deeply relieved he had finally arrived. This psycho wondered why so many creators showed up at once. Meanwhile, the young detective tried to stay calm, but his legs trembled like leaves in the wind. Park Sang-sik prayed his ally had some genius plan, otherwise they were completely and utterly dead. The brute released his current prey, fully focusing on the newcomer. He braced himself. To win, he had to play with the monster's pride, and predictably, John In-hwan walks right into his trap. Yeom Sung-gi keeps up his extremely tough guy stance and dares him to fight. The enemy charges forward, getting closer and closer just as the brute arrives. Yeom Sung-gi asks Baphomet to show him the scent of death at the absolute lowest intensity. Instantly, he realized. The battle was already won, waiting until the last second when his opponent throws the punch. He smoothly slips past it. John and H1 gasps as this kid managed to evade a strike that even the detective could not. Yeom Sung-gi smiles. Hearing about the power of Baphomet, he knew some basic logic could turn this skill into an incredibly broken ability. He could easily predict the enemy's exact movements and find the perfect path to escape from certain death. Since it was a simple physical attack, dodging became an absolute breeze. In other words, by knowing exactly when he had a 100% chance of dying, he could easily slip away with absolute precision. Watch this closely, little by little. John and H1 grows completely confused as to why his prey keeps slipping away, and inside his head, Black Knight warns him that every single movement is draining his health rapidly. He had to deliver the final blow quickly. Meanwhile, Yeom Sung-gi was silently thanking his brutal morning workouts. His stamina was great. He could easily maintain this speed for much longer. He keeps baiting him to move even more confident in his victory. He continues to toy with his furious opponent. His reflexes and physical condition had truly leveled up. He leaps back to gain space, but Baphomet warns him that time is running out. They had to force the brute into committing a betrayal, but Yeom Sung-gi rejects the idea. He had reliable partners. While he held the opponent's attention, Park Sang-sik was slowly and carefully sneaking toward the cell key. If they could grab it in time, victory was guaranteed. The strategy was brilliant, but there was a massive catch. What if John and H1 noticed the detective sneaking around? Baphomet wondered, as if on cue. The giant begins to question why this little rabbit is just teasing him and running around like a headless chicken. Suddenly, he snaps around and spots Park Sang-sik reaching desperately for the key, though he is still a few inches short of grabbing it. He explodes with pure rage. How dare these pathetic little bunnies mess with him like him? Without hesitation, he charges straight at the detective, who channels his remaining strength into one final, desperate reach. Park Sang-sik finally secures it and aims at his target. It was time to send this monster to hell. He turns the key and the door creaks open. Suddenly, massive iron chains begin wrapping around John and H1, dragging him inside. But right before he plunges into the hell of injustice, he grips the concrete, shocking everyone. He knew he deserved eternal damnation for every horrible thing he did, but he still wanted to witness the living world. Down in the quiet red light district, a few shadows walked the dirty streets. A boy grew up in these back alleys, and his life was never an easy one for kid. He notices a gorgeous woman smoking as a man stalks closer. His name is Inguk, and suddenly he violently strikes the defenseless woman, warning her never to speak his name again. Thanks to his abusive childhood, he loves repeating the brutal torment he once suffered, graduating from simple alleyway pests to human prey. Suddenly, Yeom Sung-gi strikes the devastating flying kick, completely ignoring this monster's sick serial killer history. As that strike lands, John in hand finally slips his desperate grip on the ground, dragged down deep into his terrifying punishment. Somehow, this brutal fight was finally over, leaving them standing as the victors. The exhausted detective now feels the crushing agony setting in as his adrenaline fades. Yeom Sung-gi reaches out to help him, saying they must free Yeom Sung-gi. The detective mumbles a weak joke. It was unusual for him to be this friendly, but he was exhausted. He tells his partner to carry him. This hard-fought victory belongs entirely to Yeom Sung-gi and Park Sang-sik, solidifying their tight alliance. Inside the dark factory, the captive girl waits as the heavy doors swing open, flooding the space with light. They came for her. They took a serious beating, but they won. Moving quickly, Yeom Sung-gi grabs a broken glass shard, carefully slicing through her ropes. Once she is free, her weak legs collapse and she falls against him. She always acted tough, but now she weeps like a terrified child, feeling death close at hand. It was absolutely horrifying. He holds Yeom Sung-gi, letting her cry everything out. Together with Park Sang-sik, they had sent that monster to hell. Nothing to dread anymore. The medical team soon arrives, framing the scene so the detective looks like a solo savior. Meanwhile, Yeom Sung-gi slips into the shadows, vanishing entirely. The official story claims the killer escaped and is currently hunted, seemingly closing this brutal case for good. But the television broadcast catches the sharp attention of a powerful businessman. Slowly, the pieces of this puzzling game begin falling into place. That mysterious kid appeared during Gagaku's fight, and now this case. Could the investigator actually be another creator of these hells? To the public, the killer escaped, but what if he is trapped inside? If he is actually trapped inside the detective's hell, Yoon Young-han acts. He calls the corporate chief, demanding a quiet investigation into detective Park Sung-sik under the fake excuse of showing gratitude for the rescue. Soon he will discover if his dark suspicions are entirely correct. The next morning at the quiet hospital, Yeom Sung-gi reviews medical documents as Yeom Sung-gi rests. Slowly, she begins to wake up, only to find the young man sitting right in front of her. He smirks, teasingly calling her a brat who finally woke up. Without hesitation, she leaps into his arms, scattering papers everywhere. Yeom Sung-gi is completely flustered. Changed, he was actually doing pretty well. Feeling embarrassed, he quickly stood up and gently laid Yeom Sung-gi back on the bed. Right now, she just needed to rest. Meanwhile, he had to let the detective know she was awake, but before leaving, he had to hand her some documents, the research on their other two opponents. He had wanted to share this research much earlier, but because of the chaos, he was only doing it now. Before leaving, Yeom Sung-gi asked Yeom Sung-gi to read everything carefully, telling her to take care of herself before he finally arrived at the detective's room. The older man jokingly complained about being visited over Yeom Sung-gi, a grown detective acting jealous. Pretty funny, honestly. As they talked, the detective reached deep into his pocket and slowly handed a key over to Yeom Sung-gi. After everything that had happened, it was clear that tracking the other creators of hell wasn't going to be easy. Monsters like that killer wouldn't ever stop for anything, and as this game continued, the danger would only multiply. The key was a copy for Park Sang-sik's house. Even if their enemies were completely insane, they wouldn't easily dare to invade a cop's home, so it was safer there. Yeom Sung-gi completely agreed with that logic. Having an adult to rely on wasn't a bad thing. He promised he would move in as soon as he finished sorting out things at home, but Park Sang-sik had one more thing to give him. He grabbed a notebook and handed it directly to Yeom Sung-gi. That notebook contained the correct information and numbers, unlike the fake one he had given earlier when they first formed their alliance. In an instant, Yeom Sung-gi's entire world had shattered. This act of deception was nothing short of betrayal. If that triggered his glowing key, it was definitely going to be the perfect chance to eliminate him, because the detective by the final stage would surely become a formidable enemy. All of his combat abilities were absolute top tier, and based on their past intense fights, he would definitely be the final boss. Yeom Sung-gi hesitated, wondering, now that the betrayal was completely confirmed, should he wait or strike him down right now? Noticing something was wrong, the detective asked if Yeom Sung-gi was feeling unwell. Yeom Sung-gi quickly brushed the question aside, claiming he just needed to use the bathroom. Right on cue, his keys glowed. Manifesting beside him, Baphomet commented on the altered details in that notebook, showing him how dangerous this lie could really be. For them, since the sin of betrayal was officially triggered, the path was clear. It was now the absolute perfect opportunity to finish off the detective for good. The man was too powerful and already knew far too much about them. Next time, this betrayal would definitely strike at the absolute worst possible moment, right when Yeom Sung-gi would step directly into his hell. The young man gripped his key tightly. Back when the demon originally offered to let him create his own hell, he chose betrayal because it was the sin he despised most, but betraying Park Sang-sik. Now he could never forgive himself for becoming absolutely no different from the monsters he had condemned to suffer. If he grew old and died, would this betrayal become his own tragic karma, dragging his soul straight down into his very own unending hell? In that case, he would have to face his hated enemies all over again, which was the absolute last thing he ever wanted. Calmly listening to him, Baphomet remarked that when they first met, he wanted those dark feelings and inferiority complex to fuel his rage, building the perfect hell. But the closer the demon got to those two humans, the more he noticed Yeom Sung-gi changing. He was turning into someone else. Baphomet did not care about human attachments, but those decisions were risky. One wrong move, and the demon would unleash absolute regret. Yeom Sung-gi accepted those harsh terms, confident he would never let anything go sideways. Soon the trio gathered back inside the detective's private office. They spent time talking until an uninvited guest suddenly arrived. It was Yoon Young-han, who had successfully gathered every piece of critical intelligence he wanted. He was finally ready to make his move. Meanwhile, Hu Min-chi left. She went to her room to rest, completely unaware of the threat nearby. In the quiet hallway, the two unsuspecting hell creators crossed paths without saying a single word. Yu Nanghan entered the private office, flashing an incredibly warm smile. That fake friendliness immediately put both Yeom Sung-gi and Park Sang-sik on alert. Dropping his friendly act, he asked if they were teaming up to destroy his entire operations. The boy tensed, but the older detective immediately stepped in front of him. Playing completely dumb, Park Sang-sik claimed he had absolutely no clue what the businessman meant. He demanded to know how a stranger got into their secure room. The businessman laughed, saying that the detective's performance truly deserved a major global acting award. They knew there was no escaping this, and Yu Nanghan kept talking. Officially, he came to praise a hero who saved a girl. But behind that pleasant lie lay a far more dangerous, calculated agenda of his own. He was actually there to offer them a strategic alliance, shocking Yeom Sung-gi. The proposal was wild, but the boy wondered how they were tracked. Did they make a critical mistake that night, or leave behind some highly incriminating trace? The wealthy businessman quickly picked up on the kid's growing, silent confusion. He smiled, commenting that solving this puzzle was actually far easier than they ever thought. After all, an active detective working with an incredibly young partner naturally stood out. That odd combination drew eyes, plus, Yu Nanghan had already done his homework on them. He had simply ordered his personal secretary to run a deep background check on them. That was when he discovered Yeom Sung-gi was only a student. Placing a fruit basket down, he wondered why a top cop was acting so incredibly strange. Why would he operate outside his jurisdiction with a kid? It simply made no sense, unless they were both active players in the exact same game. They were actually Hell creators who had formed a tight, temporary alliance. Both teamed up during those major battles because their enemies were also players using systems. Their opponents were targets, he did not need to say more. His deduction was absolutely flawless. Now here is the big question, what would they do? Would they confess, or did the detective have some wild trick left? Park Sang-sik smirked, mockingly asking what the rich businessman expected them to say now. That fearless, cocky reaction caught everyone in the room off guard. Before the businessman could even react, the detective demanded to know his ultimate endgame. What did Yu Nanghan really want, should they beg him? Were they supposed to crawl and beg like Jang Chial did, or was that actually unnecessary? It seemed the rich jerk had finally met his match. Someone who knew his moves, Yu Nanghan shook his head. Unnecessary, he would never have wasted his own precious time if that was his primary goal. Instead, he would have sent a lackey. He already explained his real intention. He wanted a tight alliance with both of them, but Park Sae-hyuk flatly refuses. Park Sae-hyuk already had a solid pact with the architect. It was unbreakable. Plus, he likely recruited the streamer too. Time to reveal the truth. He flashes a sideways smirk. What does this wealthy player actually want? Dropping a massive bombshell, he reveals that Young Cheol has completely vanished. The businessman has no clue if he is dead or locked up. So he wants to hunt down the culprit. He wants them found. He wants the ghost who managed to operate right under his nose. Whoever pulled that off has to be one of their most dangerous players. He extends his hand. Yu Jung-hyuk has no interest in empty offers. His only goal is to work together until they find the missing architect. They must find the kidnapper, no exceptions to this rule. In that moment, Yeom Sung-gi makes his silent decision. This businessman is highly dangerous. Sending him to hell won't be easy. His own hell has its limits, but there is still a way to break him. He reaches out and they shake hands. Yeom Sung-gi accepts the deal. Accepting the alliance is just a play to make the guy betray him first. Now look here, in a dark abandoned warehouse, the bound architect watches a shadow approach. She looked completely harmless before, but this is Kim Yoo-jin, the real boss. The giant thugs standing nearby instantly bow to her in deep respect. Rip the tape off and make him talk, she orders. Yoon Jang-cheol immediately panics. He screams curses, demanding to know who they are and why they captured him. Ignoring his cries, Kim Yoo-jin asks what his crime is and starts counting. When he stays completely silent, she calmly commands her demon to handle him. The architect begs to negotiate, but it is far too late for that. His finger snaps backward. The man screams in pure, agonizing pain. She asks again what his crime is. He desperately promises to confess. He will tell her everything, just ask and he will answer. In response, she orders another broken bone. The man screams in agony. She calmly says she wants a clear, direct answer. What was your crime? The broken man whimpers that his offense was nothing but simple negligence. Kim Yoo-jin asks if he knows the hell of any other player. Trying to bear the immense pain, he gasps out the name Capable. Since that was not clear enough, she orders another finger broken. To stop them, he screams that Capable is the actual name of a player. But even so, he is punished. The low hum of a printer fills the room. If he meant a person, he should have said so from the start. The architect keeps crying, saying he already promised to cooperate. There was no need for that. She examines her gathered files on Yoo Nong-han. He seems smart and highly connected, but none of that will save him. She's going to find a way to drag him straight to hell. With that, she orders her two partners closer. It is time to get ready. Meanwhile, still resting in his hospital bed, Yoo Nong-han says he knows nothing. He knew absolutely nothing about the person who kidnapped Yoon Jong-cheol. This made any real investigation impossible, but he was sure, dead sure, if Yoon Jong-cheol leaked even a single detail to the enemy, they would definitely gather for an ambush. She asked if his men were ready, and everyone agreed, yes, that ambush was the perfect trap. The businessman needed to corner his target. That was the core plan of their alliance formed 12 years ago in a dim parking garage. Meanwhile, executions were being carried out on a boss's orders. One loyal member tried clinging to honor, shouting that those lowlife rats could not just barge in and leave unpunished. But they cut him off instantly with a devastating punch right to the face, raining down brutal blows until his voice finally faded away. They fully understood the stakes and came here with one goal, settling the score. If you had just kept your mouth shut and accepted your fate, maybe a couple slaps would suffice. Sneered the rival gang's ruthless leader, Kim Young-soo. Right then, 3 expensive cars screeched into the garage, and heavily armed thugs stepped out. Ki Moon Young, the head of the Ki Seo Bang gang, stepped forward. Kim Young-soo met him with a highly disrespectful, casual grin. An angry subordinate growled at the sheer audacity of the punk, but the boss remained calm, demanding to know his demands. He smirked, acting clueless now was completely useless. They had a massive score to settle. Just then, a squeaking wheelchair rolled forward, revealing a paralyzed, vegetative young man named Cho Seung-rak. He had once been a powerful leader of the Jongno gang. Now, look at his tragic state. The beatings he endured were so incredibly brutal that walking again seemed entirely impossible. Regardless of the past, Kim Young-soo demanded to know how the head of Ki Seo Bang planned on paying for this damage. A subordinate snapped back that it was Cho Seung-rak's own fault for stubbornly meddling in their gang territory. But before the man could finish, his own boss silenced him with a sharp slap. Ki Moon-young knew the situation perfectly. Idiots did not need to speak out of turn right now. Well, if the old man understood, then surely he was prepared to pay up. Right on cue, 2 heavy suitcases are kicked right to his feet. The smug rival tells him to fill them both to the brim with cash and hand over a massive chunk of his business profits. That way, the entire territory of the Ki Seo Bang gang belongs to them, letting them expand effortlessly. They mockingly add how tragic it was for his son to end up paralyzed. So what is the old boss waiting for? Pay up now or prepare for war. Instead of answering, Ki Moon-young calmly orders his man to bring out his beloved daughter. A terrified little girl is led out of the vehicle. She was only 7 years old. Kim Young-soo scoffs, asking if he thinks pity works on gangsters. But the old man ignores him, gently brushing his daughter's hair and saying that since he owes a massive debt to these men, his daughter must pay the price. With a cold glare, the old man pulls a gleaming, sharp knife from his long coat. His enemy just boasted that his own son would never walk again. If he did the same to his daughter, they would be even, before anyone can react. He slices both her Achilles tendons. Just like that, everyone is frozen in absolute shock. Honestly, who could have ever predicted he would go that far? It was a sick twist. Men who had been hardened gangsters for 20 years had never seen a father destroy his own daughter like this. It clearly crossed every line, while the poor girl shivers in agonizing pain. Her father smiles, whispering that he owes her a massive debt and will repay it. Then an object drops to the floor. A man slowly reaches down and grabs it. Dozens of brutal gangsters lay completely broken around him, strangely black. Smoke starts pouring from their mouths, noses, and ears, sitting in her wheelchair. Through the chaos is Kim Yoo-jin. Her demon asks if he should kill them all. But she coldly refuses. She wants to collect this debt with her own hands. He just needs to push her chair. In the main hall, her father shivers, and when the door creaks open, he knows his end is near. His daughter finally has enough raw power to collect what she is owed. He pathetically begs her to stay back. But it is completely useless. Kim Yoo-jin turns the key and a literal hell opens, dragging her father's body and soul straight into the abyss. That was her clean exit. A debt settled forever. While the businessman ruled the world of light, Kim Yoo-jin controlled the pitch-black shadows, unlike Yoo Nung-han and his elite corporate forces, who used money and influence to hide their absolute worst crimes. The street gang under her command committed sins in her name to avoid going to hell. Now a loyal subordinate hands her a copy of the target's busy schedule. He gets a quick nod of approval, but what about the captured architect? The terrified man begs for mercy, claiming he cooperated fully with their demands. He was just a pawn for Yoo Nung-han. She slowly glides toward him. Staring deep into his eyes, she will spare him, but he now owes her big. She could easily end his life right here, but mercy has a steep price. Jang Jangchul eagerly accepts. Living with a debt is far better than dying. The boss orders her men to cut him loose. He might still be useful later. Looking closely at the schedule, she notices an upcoming charity event in 2 days. 2 days left, time to get ready for absolute chaos. It is the absolute perfect window for an ambush. She orders a massive mobilization. Soon the fateful night arrives, and her entire army is fully assembled. She asks, "Are they ready?" A roaring yes echoes back. The raid is officially on. The soldiers quickly pile into their vehicles. Over at the heavily guarded mansion, the elite gathering is buzzing as Yoo Nung-han mingles with high society guests. Suddenly, he spots his 2 most anticipated targets, Yeom Sung-gi and Park Sang-sik. They were brought in to serve as elite security, but they had their own plans. The grumpy detective complains that he is only sticking around for the free buffet. The kid signed up for this mess, not him. Yeom Sung-gi rolls his eyes, tell him. Stop being so dramatic, he tells him. Then he asks if she will show. He guarantees they will. Unlike highly secured corporate headquarters, this grand estate has wide-open spaces and vulnerable spots. It is a perfect infiltration point. For anyone wanting to slip inside unnoticed, they are walking straight into his trap. Now another lethal hell creator is moving toward the mansion. The battle is looming. And here we go again. The game is officially back on. The elite party is roaring. From the dark woods outside, Kim Yoo-jin silently watches. Police patrol movements through her binoculars, even with this heavy. At this high-profile event, the security looked surprisingly weak, even rookies. Under her could do better. What should they do? Asked the young man right beside her. Their target was Yoo Nung-han, and wasting this chance was not an option. As for the other guests, they would simply deal with anyone who got in their path. Taking care of any minor obstacles, that way was actually a pretty simple task. The young associate stepped right out of the vehicle and headed straight for the front gates. Just as they expected, a guard immediately blocked his path, demanding to see his invitation. Nodding quietly, the young man reached inside his heavy coat, as if searching for an envelope. The guard kept a very close eye on him, but there was no envelope inside. Instead, he whipped out a weapon. Before the guard could even blink, he lunged forward. The attacker struck hard. That was one less security guard to worry about. Since the strike was so blindingly fast, the second guard stood frozen, completely unable to call for help. With the gate now cleared, Kim Yoo-jin barked orders over the radio frequency. She commanded Team 1 and Team 2 to move in, and they immediately accelerated. Their heavy vehicles crashed right through, making their arrival absolutely impossible to miss. An entire squad of heavily armed thugs suddenly stormed directly into the venue. Hijacking the main audio system, Kim Yoo-jin warned the crowd to stay completely still. She ordered everyone unrelated to Yoo Nung-han to move back against the nearest walls. Their sole target was the QS businessman, and anyone who refused to comply would be treated as a hostile threat. Nearby, Yoo Nung-han quietly watched the chaos. He realized they had actually shown up, meaning he needed to escape before panic spread. Just as he prepared to slip away, a loud scream echoed through the hall. A guest was violently knocked to the floor right in front of the armed gang. The poor man was made a brutal example to show everyone how serious they were. Terrified guests immediately scattered in a wild panic, but the brave businessman stood his ground. The thug who had just attacked the guest locked eyes with him from across the room. Watching closely, Yeom Sung-gi was highly curious to see how this tense standoff would unfold. However, the detective pulled him back, refusing to let him risk his life for nothing. Being temporary allies did not mean they had any obligation to die for the businessman. They were heavily outnumbered by at least 24 armed thugs surrounding the area. Taking them all down was impossible, and if Yu Nonghan got captured, so be it. It might even work in their favor, given how powerful the businessman actually was. From the detective's cold perspective, letting things play out was the smartest move. Meanwhile, Yu Nonghan tried to act calm and keep the situation under control. He stood tall, acting as if he still held all the cards. Nearby, one of the thugs radioed Kim Yujin to report they had located their target. He asked where to take him, but she replied there was no need. Her command was brutal: execute him immediately. Her partner demon questioned this choice. Wondering why she would not drag him to her hell, she explained the rules. Lucifer made it clear that in this death game, banishing souls was optional. Winning did not require her to show up in person, which was way too risky. Furthermore, that wretched architect had confessed that Yu Nonghan had recruited other allies. Specifically, a formidable warrior named Gagaka was now guarding the businessman. Memory of that terrified architect's screaming details flashed in her mind. Stepping directly into that trap would make her an incredibly easy target. She was just playing it safe, even if he understood her reasoning. Her demon absolutely hated this plan. All he wanted was to watch humans drag each other to hell. She laughs, telling Cherubim not to worry. Once this little game was over, she would send every last gang member present the day she got injured straight to hell. It seemed the wealthy businessman had everything under control. He snapped his fingers, declaring that it was time to begin. A gangster sneers, asking if he had completely lost his mind, but slowly armed fighters begin stepping out from the crowd and closing in on the gangsters. The clash begins, and those fighting for Yu Nonghan quickly gained the upper hand. Sure, they knew his entire schedule inside out, but there was no checking his secret guest list. Long before the party kicked off, the businessman prepared himself by hiring elite guards to blend into the crowd. He ordered them to stay in character, raising zero suspicion while keeping a close eye on everything around them. Kim Yujin was not the only one with elite killers on call. He gives her credit for her absolute audacity, but what on earth is her next play? From the shadows, the female gangster just smiles. Over the radio, her men report the surprise security forces, warning her they cannot get near the target. Unbothered, she orders groups 3 and 4 to smash right in. Instantly, more cars crash through the gates. Watching the chaos, Yu Nonghan is not even slightly surprised by these incoming reinforcements. Calmly, he walks toward his mansion. It is time. She orders her demon to go after him and bring him back as a gift, promising him the throne of the demon underworld. Hearing this, Cherubim steps out, stalking toward his target. The garden is a total war zone, but once Cherubim arrives, his monstrous strength immediately shifts the entire momentum of the battle. Lacking a physical body of his own, this demon simply hijacks human flesh. But during a massive strike, he accidentally shatters the hand of his current host. Another fighter spots the opening and lands a heavy blow from behind, but Cherubim simply exploits his broken vessel to leap straight into the body of his attacker, now with a brand new host. He grins, feeling more powerful than ever. This shell is way better than the last. Still, as a chaotic demon, he does not care about allies or enemies. Naturally, the entire battlefield spirals into absolute chaos. He roars at the thugs to storm the mansion while he buys them time. Re-energized, the mob charges forward once more. Meanwhile, the quiet chess match between the two masterminds continues. Piece by piece is wiped off the board. This is no longer about picking the perfect moment. It is about brutal survival, whatever the cost. Sudden, heavy banging echoes at the mansion door, growing louder by the second. The mob is relentlessly battering the entrance, desperate to break inside. Then a massive enforcer arrives and kicks the door clean off its hinges, letting the killers flood inside. He barks orders, telling his men to split up into small groups and start the hunt. They must not leave without Yu Nonghan's head. After that, everyone scatters to search for their prey inside the mansion. In one of the rooms, 2 subordinates complain about how rich people love showing off. They prepare to search the place thoroughly, and one of them spots a closet. He thinks nobody would hide in there and pulls it open, but he was wrong. Inside that closet sits Gagaka, holding his key, ready to begin. He starts swallowing the gangsters, dragging them into his invasion hell. The boys' hell had one catch: in theory, it should not work here. Inside this mansion, but as a master strategist before planning any attack, Yu Nanggonghan had already invested in a brilliant defense strategy. He took the deeds to all his estates and added Gagaka's name. This was done so the boy could trigger his power on any private property. Because of this, the boy took the chance to set up his territory by building various secret passages and deadly traps inside the mansion. Now he can move freely, reaching any corner faster than anyone else. This maximizes his combat abilities. Meanwhile, Yun Yonghan watches closely. He monitors everything from the VIP section as more enemies fall. They are ending up in Gagaka's hell, but the main target is still missing. Where on Earth is the boss? Soon, the battle grinds to a stalemate. Kim Yoo-jin quickly realizes her men inside the mansion are vanishing. All she hears are their desperate screams before they get devoured. That strange power must belong to either the businessman or his partner. Too bad she already sent everyone inside. She orders a fallback. She tells the remaining survivors to retreat immediately to the open garden, because it seems his key will not work out there, making it a safe zone. Slowly they start coming out. In the end, they are not entirely stupid after all. Just as things were getting fun and the boy was enjoying himself, they run. With no more cards left to play, he stays inside the building. He tells Gagaka to do the same. Calling the cops right now is useless. Their only real shot at turning this situation around is their current alliance. That means relying on Yeom Sung-gi. Outside, those two hold their ground. They blend in with the other guests as Yeom Sung-gi reaches into his pocket. He pulls out an earpiece. It seems they have another hidden player. It is a secret player that even Yun Yonghan knows absolutely nothing about. Hu Min-ki is their ultimate trump card. He calls her over the radio. She answers loud and clear, and he asks if she found the attacker. To unleash her full power, she starts running around the mansion. Her ability picks up Yeom Sung-gi, Park Sang-sik, and Yun Yonghan. She also detects Gagaka and one other person near the main entrance. She is at the entrance, but since the target is a woman, she cannot drag her into the hell of lust. He asks if she will follow orders. Since she almost died once already, she knows he will not betray her. The girl simply responds that she is completely ready for anything. First, they must contact that mysterious woman to see why she is hiding. Her specific hell likely has very low versatility, limiting what she can do. On top of everything else, her demon partner is not suited for this situation. With enough time left in the garden, she slowly made her way toward the car. Meanwhile, Ki Yoo-jin kept wondering what her next move should be. If the cops showed up, she would have to run for it. Suddenly, a girl popped the car door open, startling her completely. As if they were old friends, the girl asked to climb inside, complaining about the freezing cold. The gangster demanded to know her identity, but Yeom Min-ki replied that showing her was easier. In trying to explain, as she pulled her key right out of her pocket, how did she know she was waiting here? Even worse, how did she know she was also a hell creator? Could this be her special power? The girl gently told her not to be afraid. She was not there to start a fight, proving her peaceful intentions, because her key was not even reacting at all. Instead, someone was highly interested in having a quick chat with her. She pulled out an earpiece and gently pressed it into Kim Yoo-jin's ear. They started communicating, and she demanded to know his goal, since he was in the garden. He had to be hiding right there among the wealthy businessman's guests. He really was lying low, but he had a target, and he needed her help. That goal was to team up and capture Yun Honghan. Right now, she was totally useless from the outside. And that was obvious from the way her crew was just standing around the garden. If she agreed to cooperate with his instructions, they could easily take the businessman completely by surprise. She debated her options, not knowing what his real motives were. But it was true that her hands were completely tied out here in the open. Events were moving perfectly in line with what Yeom Sung-gi wanted. And in the end, she decided to accept this temporary partnership. Step by step, she relayed fresh commands down to her subordinates. They spun around toward the guests and threatened them to follow whatever instructions they were given. Everyone was forced to line up. They were going straight inside the host's massive home. One by one, they filed into the mansion. The plan was moving smoothly. Once every single hostage was inside, a new strategy was set in motion. Assigning one gangster to guard each specific visitor, they paired up immediately. It looked like a bizarre, high-stakes game was about to unfold throughout the mansion. The brilliant mind behind this hostage system was none other than Yeom Sung-gi. This setup was the ultimate counter to Gagaku's hell. He immediately calls Yun Honghan for guidance on what to do next. Unfortunately, these hostages were incredibly wealthy clients. The crowd was packed with highly influential public figures. What would the other hell creators think of him? How could he possibly explain a massive disaster like this to the authorities afterward? In other words, he was completely stuck to protect his precious reputation and lucrative business. He could not unleash his powers. He strictly orders that under no circumstances should Gagaku activate his ability. This would keep things quiet and simple. The thugs could continue hunting with far fewer obstacles. Ever since Yeom Sung-gi accepted this alliance, he did not care about the competitor targeting him. Honghan, the actual threat in this sick game, was the businessman himself. And taking him out was the only priority. Yun Honghan was starting to panic. Gripped by a massive anxiety attack, gangsters who once relied solely on mindless violence were now playing a highly strategic game. It was clear that the person pulling the strings had changed. Who was the mastermind running this show from behind the scenes, working alongside those three partners? What could his true goal be? Did his opponent have other secret connections? No, that was impossible. The person pulling the strings from behind was likely someone on the inside. That theory perfectly explained how they built a system to counter Gagaku. He hated relying on his demon's power, but the moment had come. With no other choice left, he summons Ram, and the demon immediately materializes at his side. The businessman demands to use his future vision, marking a historic first for a human. To have a mortal ask for this power, the demon happily complies and strikes his staff. The staff hits the floor as the Eye of Horus glows, drawing a magic circle. Forms on the ground. Of course, Yu Nunghan absolutely hated using this power. Although incredibly overpowered, the future vision could only be triggered 3 times. He was not about to waste such a trump card on a minor threat. As the room bathes in blinding light, the businessman sees fragments of the future. The future flashes before his eyes. He sees the next few hours. They would locate his hideout, with Yeom Sung-gi orchestrating every single move. If he tried to use his ki, the boy would block and ruthlessly attack him. Just like that, he would die. Furious, he learns the shocking truth. Yeom Sung-gi was pulling all the strings. If Baphomet could sense the essence of death, then Ram's ultimate skill was to foresee the future and completely alter it. Grabbing his radio, the businessman orders Gagaku to immediately eliminate Yeom Sung-gi. A major problem, that boy was actually a guest, not an intruder. Once again, the businessman panics. How long had that brat been plotting this coup? Desperate, he keeps his eyes locked onto the glowing feed of the security cameras, tracking every single step the boy takes. In reality, Yeom Sung-gi had not planned this. He lacked the critical intel needed to orchestrate such an incredibly complex scheme. But he had reliable allies, trusting the detective to safeguard him from the shadows. Together with Hyun Min-chul on the outside, they kept him safe in this war. Without their support, winning this war was impossible, unfortunately for Yu Nunghan. His luck had finally run completely dry, turning this into a very unfortunate night. Ram watches in pure shock as the powerful human trembles with fear. Yu Nunghan had miscalculated everything, thinking the detective and the kidnapper were threats. But that high school student was actually the ultimate Trojan horse. Now he could no longer even rely on Gagaku's ability to save him. Only himself left. He couldn't believe his people had betrayed him. He would personally ensure that foolish kid paid a heavy price for this. Coldly, he orders Gagaku to strike, completely ignoring how the guests might react. No holding back, Gagaku is absolutely thrilled by this direct command. Getting to run wild without any annoying restrictions was his dream come true. The demon shivers with anticipation before morphing directly into Yu Nunghan. It would be a game of tag with a fake decoy running. Right on cue, his opponents fall straight into the trap, like mindless fools. With that opening wave alone, they effortlessly eliminate 4 of their opponents. He turns the key, swinging the massive gates wide open as info travels fast. Word spreads that the businessman is near the lobby. Forget the guests, take action. Yeom Sung-gi watches in confusion as the gangster suddenly runs off without warning. It made no sense, especially since the guy did not even have a radio. The tracker found the target in a completely different wing of the mansion, which made absolutely no sense. Just staying alive and hiding was hard enough. What on earth was that lunatic planning? Meanwhile, the real Yu Nung-han showed his face and marched straight toward Yeom Sung-gi. This happened while Jin Jang used his clever disguise to keep everyone else busy. Ram questioned his moves. Did he even have a plan? Walking right out like that was risky. It was a pretty reckless gamble. Still, his objective was simple: hunt down that little nerd. He wanted him finished. Right then, his demon chimed in, asking exactly how he would pull that off. In response, the businessman simply held out his key. He could see into the future. His opponent did not have that kind of vision, making things highly lopsided. Against a power like his, someone like Yeom Sung-gi was basically helpless and incompetent. Yu Nung-han warned Ram never to question him again. He absolutely despised being questioned. He could not stand the thought of anyone standing above him. After all, he started with nothing. Long ago, an elderly woman walked down a dark hallway and gently opened a door. Inside the room sat Yu Nung-han as a 7-year-old child. She greeted him with pure warmth. She asked if he was hungry, offering some warm, roasted sweet potatoes for them to share. The little boy explained that he was studying hard to build a successful future. He wanted to be a wealthy boss with piles of money. His dream was incredibly innocent back then. All he wanted was a comfortable life, hoping to pay off his father's crushing debt. That way, he and his grandmother could finally stop running. She gently stroked his head. She warned him that while money and fame might seem dazzling, some things mattered much more. The young boy looked quite confused, so his grandmother offered a simple explanation. She told him that their precious time together could never be bought with any amount of wealth. Some things and some people simply do not have a price tag. Even the wealthiest person alive could not buy true love. Honestly, she was just deeply worried. She did not want him growing up like his father, who was completely blinded by greed. Eventually, he lost absolutely everything. Fast forward a few years to a law office. Their debts had finally caught up. It was a massive sum they could never afford. Under the immense stress, his elderly grandmother eventually fell quite ill. Before long, the young Yu Nung-han was left completely alone in a harsh world. While he was still grieving his beloved grandmother, a heartless debt collector approached him. Demanding payment for the cremation, the man tried to yank the urn right out of his hands. The urn slipped and crashed, scattering his grandmother's ashes across the cold floor. That cruel moment broke him. From then on, Yu Nung-han worked any job he could find. Her words about money, not buying everything, echoed in his mind. Yet there he stood, watching his meager belongings get soaked under the pouring rain. Now homeless and evicted, his things lay out on the street as a dark truth hit him. Without money and power, you truly could not protect anything you cared about. From that day, he promised himself never to let anyone look down on him again. By burying himself in studies, he remained fully dedicated to his climb. Nothing would stop his journey to the top, abandoning the weak without a second thought. Casting aside the useless, he chose only partners who could help him rise. That cutthroat drive eventually made him the boss of the powerful QS Corporation. Even when fired employees begged at his feet, he felt absolutely zero pity for them. If they wanted a better outcome, they should have simply stopped being so useless. It was much better to sweep those incompetent fools straight out of his sight. He would show those lucky but incompetent fools what a real hell looked like. Right then, a creature approached, choosing him as the perfect tool for its goal. Had he ever thought about handling the humans he despised in some other way? That was the moment he realized how to never be left at a disadvantage again. Strolling through the massive mansion, he finally stood face to face with Yeom Sung-gi. The young man jumped in surprise because, theoretically, his target was supposed to be elsewhere. Locked in the main hall, now he was going to make Yeom Sung-gi pay the ultimate price. For making a mockery of him, Yeom Sung-gi stared in shock at Yu Nung-han standing there. He was supposed to be trapped at the entrance hall, not right here. The businessman roared that he would pay dearly for making him look like a total fool. Step by step, he closed the distance, utterly convinced that victory was already his. He was certain of two things. First, his opponent could never send him to hell, because Yeom Sung-gi's version of hell was far less versatile than his own. Even during the brutal clash with Gagaku at the hospital and the party, through all those moments where death loomed close, he had never once used his ki. That proved his power was extremely limited. His second certainty was even simpler. Yeom Sung-gi had already committed the ultimate sin of being totally incompetent, blindly rushing into a fight without even understanding his enemy's hidden abilities, relying purely on cold, hard logic against an opponent as ridiculously competent. As Yoo Nung-han, that foolish rebellion brought them straight to this moment. But were the arrogant businessman's assumptions actually correct? Let's find out. Had Yeom Sung-gi actually made that kind of stupid mistake? Well, the cold reality speaks for itself. The key did not react at all. This left the businessman completely baffled if he could see the future. And his foe could not. How was he losing? Utterly lost, Yoo Nung-han spun toward Ram and began screaming at the demon. He demanded to know if exposing Yeom Sung-gi's trick proved his own superiority. Ram simply stared back and swallowed hard, no matter how much he screamed. The outcome was already set. The young man just smirked with pure amusement. Sure, predicting the future was an incredibly wild cheat code. But what could he actually do with it now, even if he drew closer? Yeom Sung-gi felt absolutely zero intent to kill coming from him, which meant Yoo Nung-han was no longer a real threat. A crime requires action. Simply thinking about committing murder does not make a person a criminal. It does not work that way, so the future Yoo Nung-han saw and tried so hard to change was no longer even considered a crime. By trying to stop Yeom Sung-gi's act, he had ensured it never happened. To seal his fate entirely, he threw the brutal truth right. His face, the arrogant businessman, never understood how his own powers worked. Yoo Nung-han just stood frozen. Because of his strict limit of seeing the future only 3 times a year, this was his very first time actually putting the power to use. That heavy hesitation and his absolute lack of experience had completely backfired. Still, he clung to the belief that Yeom Sung-gi could never defeat him. But then the young man's ki began to glow with blinding light. Yoo Nung-han wonders why this never appeared in his visions. Why now? One thing was clear. By changing the future, Yeom Sung-gi could now banish him to hell. After all, the businessman had committed the absolute sin of betrayal. He screams in pure desperation, claiming he always made the right choices. But that was the exact reason he was being judged right now. He always chose the selfish path, looking out only for himself. Betrayal was inevitable. Suddenly, a dark portal opens and black tentacles reach out, snaring Yoo Nung-han. Just like that, the corrupt businessman is caught and dragged down, straight into Yeom Sung-gi's hell, screaming as the heavy doors slam shut. The victor is decided. Sometimes being a little patient is the best choice. Because he chose not to strike the detective that day, everything fell into place. He managed to capture Yoo Nung-han, so that is his end, Ram says. The figure dissolves right in front of them. Baphomet is absolutely thrilled. They turn to their next target, but Yeom Sung-gi's legs suddenly buckle. Baphomet asks what is wrong. They still have so many targets left to hunt down. Yeom Sung-gi replies he is not getting soft. It was the crushing tension, the thugs crashing the party, and the split-second decisions he had to make. To beat Yoo Nung-han at the very last second, he is completely drained. No normal human could adapt this fast to a chaotic mess like that. Still, his powers are clearly growing fast. It is time to end this. On one side are the wealthy guests of Yoo Nung-han, on the other, dangerous thugs. Ki Myujin's elite crew, a pretty messy situation for Rookie Hell creators. Like Gagaka and Park Sang-sik, but using the security feeds, Yeom Sung-gi acts. He starts plotting a way to sort through all this absolute madness. Time to clean up. Pulling out his phone, he dials the police emergency line. For a little extra drama, he pinches his throat and coughs weakly. When the officer picks up, Yeom Sung-gi rasps out a desperate plea, screaming that crazy gangsters are tearing the party apart and people are dying. Naturally, the operator asks for the address. Yeom Sung-gi's acting is top tier. He called the cops because he needs this mess cleared out immediately. After all, normal citizens and dangerous players are locked in the same room. If things go sideways, everyone will panic and tear each other apart. The second reason, he needs Ki Myujin's backup neutralized and out of the picture. He needs them pinned down fast, and that is exactly what happens next. Sirens wail, officers swarm the building, putting cuffs on the thugs one by one. But there is still one wild card left. The girl's demon is in the crowd. Slipping away, he instantly possesses one of the officers, hijacking his body. He senses something is terribly wrong. He needs to protect his master right now. So he tosses the police sidearm aside and sprints straight toward her. Yeom Sung-gi watches this play out on screen and contacts Hu Ming-ki, telling her to abandon the vehicle and get out of there immediately. She pulls out her earpiece and steps onto the pavement. Yoon Nung-han is taken care of. Her work here is officially finished. She bids Ki Mujin farewell and blends seamlessly into the crowd. Moments later, Cherubim reaches the empty car, desperately searching for his human. What happened left her in a tough spot. She never expected someone as formidable and strategic as Yoon Nung-han to exist. He didn't even lift a single finger, yet he easily captured the target, making a fool of her. Fool out of her, they had to escape right now. That guy she spoke to was pure trouble. Meanwhile, Yeom Sung-gi was busy figuring out how to wipe out all the recorded evidence. He rips out the cables and hurls the computer across the room. He stomps on the black box until it finally sparks and dies. The police can't find out anything about tonight. If they do, a massive witch hunt for Hell creators is going to start. He grabs a fire extinguisher and blasts the computers with that final touch. Almost everything is ready. Now he just needs to blend in and vanish. Baphomet asks if they have any remaining business to take care of. Yeom Sung-gi stops. The last loose end is Yoon Nung-han's ally, the streamer. Gagaga, since that wealthy businessman showed up, he's totally out of reach. But Gagaga had the exact same escape plan and slipped directly into the crowd to escape. Suddenly, someone grabs him, giving him an absolute heart attack. Thankfully, it is just a friendly officer who approached him from behind. Saying he'll happily escort him home, he thanks the cop and hops in, barely believing he made it out alive, but he has absolutely no clue that Yeom Sung-gi called the police for a very specific reason. This detective knows exactly how to isolate Gagaga from the crowd, safe in the backseat. Gagaga sighs in pure relief, barely believing he survived. He gives the officer his home address, completely unaware that the man driving him is another deadly hell creator. Detective Park Sang-sik hits the gas and takes off, but soon Gagaga feels that something is seriously wrong. They aren't heading toward the city center. That's when he decides to look at the driver and spots Detective Park Sang-sik. Yoon Nung-han had claimed this cop was on their side, but taking him to a strange, secluded place. While the businessman is missing means this guy is a fraud. Escape is urgent. He has to bail out immediately, since the vehicle is moving slowly. He could try to jump out, but wait, did he really think it would be that easy? The door is locked, trapping him inside with a monster, a police cruiser isn't a taxi. You can't just open the doors from the back. Gagaga brandishes his key and warns the driver that driving makes him an easy target. But the threat falls completely flat on Fernando, who simply dares Gagaga to go ahead and open a portal. The young streamer is instantly stunned. He thought he still had a secret trump card to play, but that isn't the case. Bluffing is useless against the detective now. Fernando already figured out how the young man's ability operates. First, he only sends victims to hell in specific locations. That means his ability has strict geographic restrictions. If the place doesn't belong to him, he can't open the portal. Then the detective pulls out his own key, threatening Gagaga that if he won't open a gate, the cop will do it instead. With all the people the boy already dragged to hell, he's far from innocent. So if he wants to survive the ride, he'd better sit tight and shut his mouth. Seeing no other way out, Gagaga finally agrees to the officer's terms. They eventually arrive at their destination, where none other than Carlos is waiting for them. Somehow the young man managed to beat them there. He jokes that his taxi driver went full fast and furious after being offered double the fare. Well, he made it in one piece, and that's what counts. It's time for the star of the show to enter, the detective says. Opening the door, Gagaga leaps out faster than a rabbit and drops to his knees. He begs Carlos for forgiveness, crying out that he'll do absolutely anything to make amends. But the moment he looks up, he realizes it won't be that simple. The pair stare down at him like he's trash. That was the guy Yoon Nung-han called the detective's little lackey, but the truth was completely different. Actually, the detective was the one taking orders. The businessman completely underestimated this nerd and paid the price. If gangsters had done it, they'd at least find a body. Carlos approaches the trembling boy, who quickly looks away and reminds him of something. Yoon Nung-han is currently rotting in hell, so what happens to his leftover rat? The red-haired coward shamelessly begs for his life right then and there. But if he wants to survive, he has to prove he's actually useful. Carlos flashes a faint smile. He's planned to exploit Gagaga from the start. ever since seeing him at the mansion, since Gagaga's hell setup was perfect. For defense, think of it like an automated laser tower that automatically vaporizes intruders, but his demon's true power is even better. With the power of his demon Jinjang, he can easily confuse enemies as bait. Before heading into the final clash, securing Gagaga is absolutely essential. But hey, the game isn't over yet, making him pretty useful for now. Meanwhile, from a safe distance, someone watches the flashing police sirens outside. The mansion, with the cops here, the game is temporarily on hold. That watcher is the demoness Sumana, who questions her human partner, Jane Doe. Sumana asks who won, and Jane Doe replies that Yu Nun-han definitely lost. She once pegged him as a top contender, but the evidence is clear. If he'd won, he never would have called the police to risk his reputation. To sweep this mess under the rug quietly, he simply would have deployed his own private security team. There's only one logical answer. It wasn't the rival gangster leader either, since she wouldn't abandon her crew. That means a dangerous third party has stepped onto the board. Sumana praises her clever partner. They have their next target in sight. After all, they only enjoy hunting down the biggest of fish. Jane Doe taps her pen against her clipboard with a cold, knowing smile. Before this mysterious player can ruin their plans, they'll drag him straight to hell. In a trashed bedroom, Jong Chul hides under his thick blanket, Gorgodin Killies. Is disgusted by the sight. He gets the trauma, but hiding away solves nothing. The architect just whines about how completely done he is with everything. Sick of Yeom Sung-gi and utterly terrified of the ruthless gangsters. Just look at his broken fingers after enduring all that pain. He refuses to set foot outside and prefers staying home forever. Food, he only made that demon contract because his coworkers were incredibly annoying. He never wanted this life. Even Gorgodin regretted partnering with him. The regret was mutual. Then, out of nowhere, the doorbell starts ringing. Jong Chul had explicitly requested his package be left outside, but the ringing just would not stop. Annoyed, he dragged himself out of bed. He fully expected to find a typical delivery guy standing out there. But instead he was greeted by another demon and a human child. That kid standing there was Song Min Woo, a literal demon contractor. Meanwhile, the media was in a frenzy, broadcasting it on every channel. They reported the mysterious disappearance of the QS conglomerate director. Yeom Sung-gi listened to the broadcast as he went for his morning jog. It felt like a rare moment of peace had finally settled in. Gagaka and Yeom Sung-gi were even hanging out, playing video games together. Still, Hu Min-ki kept up her research while Song Min Woo attended classes normally. Ki Mu-jin also worked hard to recover her lost partner. Meanwhile, Jane Doe took advantage of the quiet to plan her strategy. The reason for this sudden calm was incredibly simple. With Yu Nun-han gone, the playing field had leveled out. Too many active players made it easy to target and expose weaknesses, since a lot of time had already passed. Players were finally beginning to understand the rules of survival much better. They knew that standing out too much would make them easy prey. Lucifer observed it all. Only 7 players remained in play now. But let's be honest, this boring piece didn't suit Hell's ruler at all. Suddenly, his personal assistant, Temagul, materialized right next to him. He remarked that this natural balance was bound to happen eventually. Large groups always tend to form alliances, but the king wasn't satisfied. He complained that his own game, 700 years ago, was entirely different. Back then, constant dread and relentless battles left absolutely no room to breathe. That chaotic violence was exactly what he wanted to see now, so Temagul suggested a plan to shatter the peace, instantly grabbing the king's interest. Intrigued, the king watched as his assistant pointed to a player on screen. Why not summon this specific young man in for a little private chat? He was, after all, the key figure holding their entire fragile alliance together. Meanwhile, back in the human world, Yeom Sung-gi was finishing up his jog. He paused to catch his breath when Baphomet suddenly materialized right behind him. The demon asked if he ever got tired of running around like that. Yeom Sung-gi replied that this physical stamina was what kept him alive before. He had to stay prepared for whatever crazy players or demons lay ahead. Baphomet could not decide whether to praise his diligence or his caution. Taking a breather, Yeom Sung-gi asked how things were going down in hell. He wondered if any of the captive souls were trying to break out. Summoning his surveillance tablet, Baphomet confirmed there had been some clever attempts. But they both knew it was completely pointless because Yeom Sung-gi was a genius. Escape from his custom hell was impossible. None of the sinners were even plotting a rebellion or trying to stage any sort of counterattack. Suddenly, though, breaking free from the wall, the massive force drags Yeom Sung-gi straight back down into the abyss, but Baphomet still has a burning question, wanting to know exactly how long he plans to keep this alliance going. They are already halfway through the game and maintaining such a massive group is highly dangerous. It gets worse if real feelings get involved. If that happens, his allies might target him first. Suddenly, memories of Yeom Sung-gi and Park Sang-sik reluctantly activating their keys and offering apologies flash before his eyes. Under the weight of those thoughts, Yeom Sung-gi goes quiet, placing a hand on Baphomet's shoulder. He calmly states that the choice is his alone to make, so Baphomet just needs to keep faith in him. The demon wants to believe, but absolutely refuses to be destroyed by foolish human sentiments. But mid-conversation, things take a sudden, sharp turn. Both of them tense up, locking their eyes onto the exact same spot. Out from the thick smoke steps Temagul, offering a polite greeting. He is highly intrigued by Yeom Sung-gi, the player currently dominating this brutal survival game. However, the quirky messenger struggles to pronounce the boy's actual name, to an underworld entity. Human names are incredibly confusing, so he lazily settles on calling him Yeom something. Baphomet demands to know what he wants by showing up like this. Yeom Sung-gi asks who he is, and the stranger replies that he is Baphomet's assistant and successor. At first, Yeom Sung-gi wonders why such a powerful demon would suddenly show up, but then a crucial memory hits him. At the start of the game, Baphomet warned him that Lucifer could change the rules at any moment completely on a whim. Now that moment is here. He asks if they came to announce some new rule, and Temagul warmly praises the young player for his exceptionally quick thinking. But before any new rules, Lucifer wants to have a direct word with him. The assistant extends his hand, and a massive portal instantly rips open beneath them. In an instant, they are inside Lucifer's palace. He warmly welcomes them, explaining this is his private office. Baphomet instantly drops to his knees while Yeom Sung-gi stands. They're completely baffled. Lucifer admits he always knew Baphomet was capable, but he never expected his human contractor to be this exceptionally clever. The kids successfully united 4 out of the 7 remaining players completely peacefully, even drawing in a weaker competitor. Baphomet feels slightly embarrassed by the praise and begins to speak, but Lucifer sharply cuts him off. He was absolutely not offering any compliments. The Devil King approaches them, completely furious. Baphomet and his human are ruining his entire game. He wanted a battlefield overflowing with excitement and legendary showdowns, but they are turning it into a cozy, team-based playground game. Taking a deep breath to regain his composure, Lucifer stops venting his raw fury. The king would love to force the demon to replace Yeom Sung-gi with someone else. But that would be incredibly unfair, since they have not broken any rules so far. Because of their clever play, he decides to give them a special little penalty. Lucifer slowly snaps his fingers, and 2 glowing screens manifest in the air. One screen displays Yeom Sung-gi, while the other shows a sleeping Park Sang-sik. Hell's master flashes a terrifying grin, telling Yeom Sung-gi that he has 1 week to banish one of his allies directly to hell. The boy struggles to process this crazy ultimatum. Turning to Baphomet, he asks if such a rigged twist is even possible. This is insane. He played completely by the book. Forcing him to betray his allies like this is absolutely cruel. Under the massive pressure, Baphomet quietly tells his partner to stay calm. He has to watch his tongue. Standing directly before him is Lucifer, the king of hell. Still, the human insists they shouldn't receive a penalty without breaking any rules. That penalty without actually breaking any game rules. Lucifer comments on his supreme boldness, noting the demon Baphomet definitely chose a contractor with real backbone. But everything runs on the king's whim. This entire game exists solely for his own amusement. If Yeom Sung-gi refuses to play by the new rules, he can easily be replaced. Right then, Yeom Sung-gi feels the crushing weight of the king's true power. Now he faces a grim choice: decide who stays an ally and who gets dragged to hell. With that final warning delivered, Lucifer is done speaking with them. It is time to return to the human world and make a final decision. Before they vanish, Lucifer nudges Baphomet and warns him not to let this game get boring. With those parting words, the two are instantly sent back to their starting point. Yeom Sung-gi's left hand begins tingling. He pulls up his sleeve to investigate. There is a glowing countdown timer burned into his skin. His time is officially ticking away. This timer is a constant, brutal reminder that they are entirely at the king's mercy. Naturally, Yeom Sung-gi's mind drifts to Park Sang-sik and Hu Man-ki. He knows that eventually, he will have to eliminate both of them to survive. For now, he unlocks the door, stepping quietly inside the detective's house to rest. Sinking into the couch, he weighs his options carefully. Sacrificing his friends completely goes against his morals, especially at this stage of the game. He refuses to do it this way. Instead, he cooks up a brand new plan. He turns to ask his demon a question, but Baphomet immediately cuts him off. The demon smugly asks if he is about to wonder which ally is more useful. But Yeom Sung-gi has a completely different question on his mind. He wants to know more about the inner workings of demons, particularly Lucifer. Baphomet is totally confused by where his contractor is heading with this. The young man wants to know how Lucifer even secured his absolute throne over hell. More importantly, he asks if there is any way Baphomet could take his place. The demon stares at him in sheer shock. That was incredibly bold. Of all things, Baphomet had never even let that crazy thought cross his mind. Lucifer claimed his crown by constructing the ultimate realm, the hell of disbelief. This realm is an absolute masterpiece of suffering. Never in history had there been a domain so packed with mortals screaming and weeping in pure despair. Its incredible structure, endless versatility, and terrifying aesthetic are unmatched. The sheer success of his creation is what rocketed him to supreme power. He quickly seized absolute authority because of it, but one key figure is missing. What exactly happened to Dante? Get ready, because here is the twist. In exchange for his creation, the human was rewarded with eternal life. This makes Dante the very first hell creator, and he might still be out there. Technically, yes, he was the pioneer, and he is likely still alive today. But if Dante were ever cast down into hell, what would happen to Lucifer? Meanwhile, a priest's echoing voice resounds from deep inside a grand cathedral. He preaches to his devoted congregation about the ultimate power of faith. This highly respected priest is none other than Dante himself, the creator of the hell of disgrace. In theory, what if Dante, the human who met him? If Lucifer got dragged into hell, the king would vanish. Yeom Sung-gi stood up. Right away, Baphomet started shaking his head, instantly rejecting the plan. After all, it was just a theory. Dealing with hell's owner was never easy. The safest bet was simply surviving, holding out until he was the last one standing. That was the safest way to keep them alive, but Yeom Sung-gi had other plans. He was totally determined. Too many shifting variables still had to be calculated. What if Lucifer changed his mind? The demon could easily keep the game running. He could keep the established rules, but add highly specific, absurd terms. Custom-tailored just for him. In other words, he was a massive thorn in Lucifer's side. He'd likely change his mind before the game ended, just to stop him from winning. They locked eyes in silence, and Baphomet knew he could not deny the truth. He was already forcing high-ranking demons to fight each other in a power struggle. Now, the demon wanted to put a tight leash on Yeom Sung-gi. Plus, there was a very high chance that this young man's personal hell would survive in the future. The demon stood still, wanting to know what his human's actual plan was, since it could spark a battle for control of hell itself. Yeom Sung-gi simply reached out his hand to the demon, promising that if this plan worked, his survival rate would be 100%.